Shortly before now, in the world of Arl, the magnificent royal castle thundered to life as our story exploded into motion. Inside the grand throne room, an official thundered the arrival of Heisenmarki Elbil. The towering duke drank in the scene, his stern face hardening, then recognition slammed into him as the figure approached. He snorts at the whispers that Al Vale seethes over being banished to the old capital. He scoffs. Could a petty grudge really drive the alleged treason plot? Now before the throne, Al Vale insists, not once did he harbor a grudge or dare whisper rebellion. He leveled a scorching glare at the king and dared, "If you still suspect me, put me under surveillance." The king reassures Heisen, declaring he never once doubted his loyalty, and that he's truly grateful. Alvale scoffed, refusing to believe him, convinced the king had already been tipped off by a secret report. His stare burned across the court as he fumed in silence, damning the reckless nobles who spread venomous rumors. He clutches at memories, sorrow burning as the twin bond he once swore was unbreakable shows its first cracks. He stares at the distant throne and a cold truth rips through him. He and his brother are farther apart than he ever imagined. A razor-sharp sound rips through the room, snapping the tense audience into stunned silence and marking the end. Alval turned to his loyal knight Adaman and ordered, "We're returning to our domain." Marcus's retinue surges onto the long road back home. A sturdy carriage flanked by armored soldiers thunders along the country road. Inside Markiel Vale, Adam, Markiel's knight, hunkered in the hush, brooding like a coiled spring. Alvale lets out a bone-deep sigh and asks himself how much longer he can shoulder the Grand Duke title before it breaks him. A memory from his youth slams into him. He longs to retire and for his brother to forgive him. Adam's voice shatters the silence as he cries out to his lord, every syllable trembling with raw concern. Alvale whirls to his knight, voice cutting through the air as he snaps, "What's the matter?" Worry claws at Adamant as he clenches his jaw and keeps chanting his lord's title, his voice cracking with each repeat. He asks if something's wrong. I smother the truth and wave it off as the capital's usual exhaustion. Alvale doubled over, clutching his stomach and growling that he was starving, then snapped the question back, "What about his knight?" A soldier outside the carriage barks, "What happened?" Adaman flings the door open and spots a scout on one knee, bowing as he quietly offers a polite excuse. The scout bursts in, breathless and frantic, shouting that a suspicious building has appeared, one that wasn't there on their last journey. LVAL and Adamant lean out, their curiosity snapping to life at the strange report. Adam pressed for a concrete description of the building's unfamiliar style. The scout stammers, eyes wide, then demands, "You have to see this with your own eyes." Alvale raked a hand through his mustache, sinking deep into thought as he grappled with the inexplicable puzzle. He snaps, adamant. It's been about 2 months since they left. He scoffed, disbelief burning as he turned over the idea that anyone could raise a whole building that fast. He crosses farmhouse and bandit hideout off the list. Nothing that exposed could hide in this heavily watched, controlled area. He scoffs, eyes flashing with contempt at anyone who'd dare build a farm here without his permission. Adamant agrees, growling that this area is a death trap and a flimsy hut wouldn't last a heartbeat. A sudden noise snaps Alvel to attention. Intrigue ignites, and he edges in. This strange mystery demands a closer look. He roared that he'd see it, bulldozing through their adamant protests about the danger. He tosses the knight's caution aside with a mischievous grin, insisting they'll only observe from a distance. Alvale snapped, demanding to know what Adamant would do if he charged ahead alone. At the first sign of danger, he barks a direct order, flee immediately. He's adamant. Alvel's face steels into iron, resolve flaring in his eyes as he braces to charge ahead. He bellows a firm, "Let's go," and surges forward, leading his loyal knight into the unknown. A vast wall of churning clouds swallows the panel, freezing the scene in a razor-edge moment of suspense. Shock ripped across Alvel's face, freezing it into a mask of raw, stunned disbelief. Before them in a clearing loomed a modern Japanese storefront, utterly alien to their world. He slammed to a stop on the adamant stairs as disbelief detonated. His mind scrambled, unable to process the impossible sight. Tonight, Alvale zeroed in, eyes blazing on the building's jaw-dropping features. All pinned him as he gaped at the door. A single flawless sheet of glass that looked forged by the gods. He jabbed a finger at the hyper-realistic noodle dish model in the window, like it dared him to taste it. His gaze zeroed in on a massive sign, its characters curling in a mysterious yet beautiful script. Strange, otherworldly music slams into his ears, and he can't help but wonder, is this a magical recording from another land? He blurted that the whole situation was utterly bizarre, and Adamant could only nod in stunned agreement. Alvale bellowed Adam's name again, then his gaze snapped to something else. The ever-cautious knight snarled a warning at his lord. Don't step into that mysterious building. Avalon slams down the order. They investigate the situation first. His eyes snap to a flicker of movement and he explodes. Adamant, there's a person inside. They gawk at his eccentric garb and snap. He's unarmed! Inside, the man hoists a steaming bowl of noodles up to his mouth. He slurps his meal loudly while Alvale and Adamant stand outside, eyes glued and utterly spellbound. Their jaws drop as they watch him devour the very dish from the display. The camera locks onto the food model and the verdict drops. It's the KK soba. Two titans halt, rooted to the spot, spellbound by a tiny everyday moment. The shopkeeper tipped the bowl and gulped the final steaming mouthful from it. Alvale and Adamant stood transfixed, the sight's wonder stealing their breath. Elville recoils and snaps. Is he dangerous? Adamant studies the man, shakes his head. At first glance, he doesn't seem like a threat. Adamant sneered that the man looked every inch a shabby commoner. I'll thrust my finger straight at the mysterious shop, my certainty slicing the air. He declares he'll go in and demands the man explain what's happening. Adamant opens his mouth to protest, but wariness claws at him as dangers lurk within. Alvale slashes through the pretense and confesses he's here to taste the food, and he figures Adamant wants a bite too. Adam demands they check for poison first. Alvale slams the decision down and tasks him with the investigation. Alvale steels himself, pivots and strides toward the entrance. He thrusts his hand forward, fingertips poised a hair's breadth from the glass door. A scout hurtled toward the minterer as Adamant's warning tore through the air. The scout cradled a glowing orb, the crisis detection gift throbbing in his palm. The diagram cracks open the orb's purpose. Red blazes danger, blue pulses safety. A divine being booms, revealing the gifts are powers granted to humanity to slay demons. Alvale shuts his eyes, letting the scout's warning roll through his mind as he sizes it up with ice-cold precision. He hoists his orb aloft. It radiates a steady, reassuring blue light. He kept his voice unnervingly calm, told Adam everything was fine, and the scouts all released a collective sigh of relief. Grasping the pulsing blue orb, Alvale roars with unshakable certainty that the shop is safe. Adam and Chai recoiled at the Lord's scare, while Alvale just shrugged it off like it meant nothing. Alvale rockets forward, roars he'll go in first, and lets Adam's frantic protests crash unheard. Adamant barked orders, snapping his men into razor alert and priming them to storm the shop on his signal. The loyal knight plunged after his lord into the strange establishment, senses razor sharp. They freeze just inside the doorway, eyes devouring every inch of their new surroundings. They stiffen mid-breath, eyes wide as the door slides shut on its own. They erupt in disbelief. Did someone really install an extravagant magical contraption just to open a door? The Grand Duke and his commander freeze, mouths agape, as a deceptively simple, shockingly advanced device robs them of every word. A tiny bell on the door cried out, proclaiming their arrival. The shopkeeper snaps his head up from his meal as two hulking men fill the doorway. Alville locks onto them with a fierce stare and asks, "Can I help you?" The shopkeeper jolted, eyes snapping wide as they materialized from the shadows without a sound. Alvale and Adamant kept their gazes pinned on the young man, dissecting every twitch and breath. Alvale's eyes narrowed to slits as his razor-sharp mind dissected the shopkeeper. Clutching a clipboard, the young man fixes them with his gaze as a nervous bead of sweat trembles on his brow. His eyes snap to the bowl he'd only moments before been devouring. Alvale's eyes narrow as he pins down the truth. Despite the man's unfamiliar features, he's a pure-blooded human. The shopkeeper's gaze zeroes in and he snaps, "Are you customers?" Marquis Alve and his knight Adamin froze, eyes pinned to something off-panel as bafflement ripped across their faces. Yukito, the young shopkeeper, froze as a cold bolt of realization ignited in his eyes. Yukito's composure snaps, sweat flooding his brow as the visitor's piercing, questioning stares drill into him. You jabbed out a shaky gesture and stammered, "Could you possibly be customers?" I cloaked my glances beneath the knight, then confirmed it. Yes, they're customers. Professional relief floods Yukito's face, and a bashful smile tugs at his lips. You could have snapped him upright, his whole bearing flipping into crisp confidence. Vale and Adamant staggered, mouths agape, stunned as his form shifted in an instant. You all sank into a deep, casual bow and welcomed them into his shop in Daitsuji Soba. He announces the menu's been stripped down to just 2 dishes, KK and morisoba. The 2 nobles stumbled, utterly lost as unfamiliar words slammed into them and sent their minds reeling. Alvel's brow knotted and his features scrunched in thought, a faint rosy blush of confusion blooming on his cheeks. He blurts, baffled, "What could a sober shop in the dish sober possibly be?" You throw the question at everyone. "Anyone know soba?" And Vale snaps back, adamant they don't. You could gape, jaw-dropping, at their total ignorance of his world's signature dish. Grinning with radiant confidence, he beckons them to taste, certain every bite will be delicious. Alvale's stern mask shatters, a wide, boyish grin splitting his face as he snaps up the offer. You shoot a sharp glance at the massive retinue waiting outside. That proves the meal is meant only for the 2 of them. After taking their order, Alvil snapped, "We're both having the kake soba." You bow with crisp politeness, then usher them toward an empty table with a sweeping, welcoming gesture. 2 imposing nobles advanced to the table, their regal presence screaming that they didn't belong. From behind the counter, Yukito's gaze zeroes in on his very first, utterly bizarre customers as they slide into their seats. Avalda Smith's Adam and caution, roaring that they'd leap in and savor every wild second. Adam and Size clenched their jaws and swallowed their protests as his lord, on a wild whim, trusted the strange shop. Alvil jolts, eyes snapping wide as a glass of water piled with clinking ice is set down in front of him. You could grin like you own the room, slide their water over, and watch 2 titans fall utterly silent. Alvale gapes as ice cubes bob in crystal-clear water, a jaw-dropping luxury. You flash a grin and declare the water's complimentary. Refills are always free. The Grand Duke's eyes bulged as disbelief slammed into him at this unheard-of extravagance. Alvale's mind short-circuited. Refills of this precious commodity were free. He slams through the math in his head, the staggering cost of ice hitting him, a treasure worth more than many meals. They're pouring crystal-clear, ice-cold water for free. That's insane! Yukito storms back into the kitchen while Alvel stays frozen, transfixed by his glass. Elvale gives in and slams back a huge gulp of water, sparking immediate, intense alarm. He bellows, "Delicious!" as Adamant scrambles in, voice frantic, demanding, "What are you doing?" Adamant growls that they must test for poison, but Alvel's already convinced. He lingers over each sip, proclaiming it water above all others, pure as a winter stream. Desperation tore through Adamant as he scrambled to figure out how to test it now, and Elvale ignored him. The knight bellows it's a death trap, but his warnings fall on deaf ears. They lock eyes, and their familiar bickering snaps shut for a charged beat. Their argument slams to a stop as Yukito breezes back in, grinning, a tray with her food cradled in his arms. He plunks a steaming bowl of keiki soap onto a wooden tray and slides it before them. Adamant leans over the ball, eyes locked and calculating with cold, military-grade precision. He zeroed in on the clear, light brown broth threading through a tangle of fine, graced noodles. He zeroes in on a scattering of paper-thin green ribbons, almost certainly a flavor-packed garnish. He snaps to the realization that the dark, paper-thin topping must be edible seaweed. He leans in, and it hits him. Beneath all the delicate flourishes, the dish is shockingly simple. 2 nobles lock their eyes on the steaming bowl as its strange, intoxicating aroma curls around them and holds them spellbound. Alvale, a connoisseur, tastes and freezes. His trained palate snaps. These noodles aren't wheat, they're made from some unknown grain. He dismissed their culinary philosophy as alien. Noodles belong slathered in sauce, never bobbing in soup. Even a royal who's savored dishes from many nations is stumped. He can't identify this dish. Adamant glares at the spare table and snaps, "Yukito, hand me a fork or a spoon!" Yukito brandishes a pair of disposable chopsticks, announces they're what everyone uses, and challenges his guests. Can you use them? Bafflement crashed over Adamant. His mind demanded to know, what could an ohashi be? Yukito proves it. He plucks a single pair of chopsticks from the container in one smooth, practiced motion. He grips the conjoined sticks and snaps them apart, showing exactly how they must be split before use. Their stately composure shattered as the 2 nobles gaped, dumbstruck, at the sight of plain wooden eating utensils. Yukito leans in with a grin and demonstrates, pinch the food between the 2 spread sticks, then lift it to eat. They gawk. People actually eat with nothing but a pair of humble wooden sticks. A Vale's realization hits like lightning. This is undeniable proof of an entirely different culture the continent has never seen. It hits him. This young man isn't from around here. He's a traveler from a land impossibly far away. Adamant asks for a fork. Alvale smirks and vows to tackle the meal with the ohashi. Adam and Eats with Eats devour their meal while Alvale flails comically at the unfamiliar chopsticks. He fumbles for the noodles at first, dropping strands and missing his mark, but resolve blazes in him. He bursts into a crooked laugh at his own awkwardness, suddenly captivated by the humble tools. He hatches a daring gambit and vows to taste the soup first. He hoists the heavy ceramic bowl to his lips and draws a measured sip of the broth. The instant the soup hits his tongue, his eyes explode open in pure, jaw-dropping astonishment. The flavor detonated, slamming both of them into a dazzling, teeming underwater world. Alvo shuts his eyes, inhales the fragrant aroma, and lets the mellow, perfectly balanced saltiness flood his senses. A comforting wave of heat from the broth barrels down his throat and buries itself deep in his stomach. Cradling the bowl like a sacred relic, he swears to himself this is the ultimate dish. He tasted the sea, salt and brine, yet the usual nasty fishy bite never came. The flavor hits crystal clear, like reclining on sun-warmed sand beside the pristine blue sweep of a southern sea. He zeroes in on the razor-thin green vegetable garnish. He beams, biting into a crisp, crunchy snap as a cool, teasing spice dances across his tongue. His eyes blaze with realization. He finally knows the true purpose of that delicious green vegetable topping. He and Adaman exchange stunned looks. The taste detonates past anything they'd imagined. After savoring the broth, Alville flashes a grin and declares it's time to dive into the noodles. Focus sharpened to a razor. He snatched a tiny bundle of noodles with his chopsticks. He hoists the glistening noodles from the bowl and slurps them with a victorious, satisfying sound. The noodles rocket through the air, rich, savory broth trailing and dripping from every strand. They hoist a perfect mouthful of noodles high, poised above the bowl, ready for the first glorious bite. He hoists the steaming noodles to his mouth and slurps the first earth-shattering bite. He slurps them down with ecstatic gusto, diving head-first into the foreign eating ritual. A new wave of flavor catapults him into a tranquil pasture where a shepherd tends his flock. He goes wide-eyed at the firm, springy chew, nothing like spaghetti that traps the soup's flavor. It explodes on your tongue, heavenly, with a singular sweetness and a warm, nostalgia-soaked rustic aroma. He gulps the mouthful, the profound flavor seizing him and anchoring itself in his core. The meal's simple, honest taste ignites a sudden, unexpected release, like a held breath finally exhaled. It tears through the memory of the royal court's suffocating, leaden atmosphere. A crushing weight of duty pins him. Grand Duke and the king's brother. Amid his inner turmoil, a humble bull becomes his unlikely anchor, and a profound peace washes through him. He stands stunned. A dish from another world has wrapped him in impossible comfort. It hits him. This humble bowl of soba runs impossibly deep, every bite echoing the tangled, aching beauty of life. He shuts his eyes, savoring the final, lingering drops of that exquisite broth like a warrior tasting victory. The bowl sat scraped clean, a silent trophy that screamed how utterly satisfied he was. He planted the bowl on the table with a blissful sigh and proclaimed, "That was soul-deep delicious." They downed their iced water, cool relief washing through them as utter contentment with the meal settled in. Yukito beams and strides up to their table, asking if his soba satisfied them. Markiel Vale and his knight Adamant slump back, bellies full and grins stretched wide, every scrap of hunger slain after the meal. Alvale tilted his head back, swallowed a long draught, then proclaimed the shopkeeper their great benefactor. Adamant's eyes widen, and he blurts out he's never tasted anything this heavenly, not even in the capital. A stab of sorrow tears through him as he laments that his king cannot savor such a glorious dish. Yukito, the shopkeeper, strides to their table and bows, gratitude burning in his eyes as he thanks them for their kind words. The two nobles snap their heads up, confusion blazing in their eyes, as Yukito freezes mid-sentence. Yukito's mouth twists into a sly grin as he thrusts a tiny shaker forward and asks about the shichimi togarashi. They ask what it is. You could have hit them with, "It's the seasoning that detonates flavor and turns plain soba into something otherworldly." He declares that its spicy kick sharpens and locks the whole flavor into place. Alville and Adaman staggered back, disbelief crackling as they gasped, "Is this really possible?" A desperate, blazing hunger seizes them both. They ache to taste this new flavor. A veil snaps for a second bowl for them both, and Adam yields, choosing to indulge his lord. Alvel's voice thundered as he confirmed the order to Yukito, who sank into a deep, reverent bow. Yukito bursts with joy, clenching his fist in a silent, victorious yes. A tidal surge of emotion slams into him. He can still chase his dream of making soba. The scene slams back. He's sprawled in the snow, convinced it's the end. Despair had him reeling, then his eyes snapped to his precious sober equipment. Now, once again, in this strange new world, he plunges headfirst back into his craft. A blaze of passion reignites inside him. He lunges to embrace his love for Nadai Tsujisoba the moment it lands on foreign soil. Meet Hatsushiro Yukito, the shopkeeper who once blazed through pages as a manga artist. Fresh out of university, he snagged a weekly manga serialization. They forced him to draw 19 pages in 7 brutal days, then piled extra work on him for the print volumes. The grind never let up. Brutal, soul-crushing workdays stretched on without end. His only escape waited in a 24-hour standing sober shop called Nadi Suja Soba. In those brutal days, he clung to that simple pleasure like the lone spark that kept him going. The shop was a major chain, and its sober steadiness was the one comfort he clung to. The rustic aroma of warm soba wrapped him, its gentle flavor carving out a quiet pocket of peace in his chest. For him and countless others, it became a sanctuary that stitched back the frayed spirits of working adults. That cherished refuge reigned as Nadai Tsujisoba, the neighborhood's beloved sanctuary. After 3 years, his manga's serialization hit its final chapter, and he hung up his pen, walking away from being an artist. He tore up his old life and launched himself into a fresh start, taking a part-time job at that very same sober shop. He surged forward. It was his turn to forge a haven where others could finally heal. He flashed a cheerful wave and plunged headfirst into his new career. He hurled himself into his new craft with a desperate, almost savage intensity, pouring every ounce of heart and soul into it. After 3 relentless years of grinding, his efforts finally rewarded him. He landed a full-time position. At last, he stormed into the manager's role, taking command of the brand-new Suitabashi branch. On the electric day of the grand opening, freak out-of-season snow began tumbling from the sky. He strode forward and spotted a young girl teetering on the ice-slick pavement, nearly losing her footing. He smirked as Tokyoites stumbled at the first flakes. Born and bred in Hokkaido, snow was second nature to him. He strode down a hushed street when a low rumble told him a truck was approaching. The truck's tires scream as it fishtails, careening out of control across the icy road. He whirled around, bewilderment and alarm ripping through him as a deafening blast shattered the air. His world detonated into a dizzying blur as the truck barreled straight at him. As his umbrella shattered, his last conscious thought hit him like a stone. It was all over. A sickening drop ripped through him as his whole world spun violently upside down. He snapped upright with a jolt, stunned to find he felt no pain. He froze, mind spinning as he frantically pieced together the surreal chaos before him. He sat, utterly alone, swallowed by a boundless, empty ocean of clouds. His fingertips sank into the cloud-like ground and he froze. Could he really be standing on top of the clouds? It slammed into him. He hadn't been saved, he'd actually died. He scanned every inch and the realization crashed over him. This strange place had to be heaven. The truck's image exploded into his mind. He knew he'd been killed the instant it struck. He crumpled to his feet, wailing that his life was over just as it was beginning. Tears carved rivers down his face as he mourned the future he'd planned with Soba. He balled his hand into a fist, frustration boiling. He was certain that ending was far too cruel. From behind, a calm voice assured him, "You don't have to be so pessimistic." He snapped his head up, tears of despair and confusion still carving tracks down his cheeks. He whipped around, jaw dropping as the last person he'd expected spoke to him. A being wreathed in light, draped in classical robes, declared himself a god, and thundered the name Yukito. Your jaw would have dropped. He looked more like a Greek god than a Japanese one. The god roared his truth. He wasn't from this world. He came from another realm, maybe an entirely different universe. Yukito froze as the truth slammed into him. He'd been yanked into another world, a textbook isekai come to life. The god bellowed, "Don't overthink this! It's just reincarnation!" He unleashed the truth. His world was a savage fantasy realm, swarming with monsters, ringing with clashing swords, and crackling with untamed magic. The god armed the people with gifts, raw, deadly powers forged to hunt down demons. You were still reeling. Why would a god want someone as ordinary as him? The god cracked a smile and declared the reason was disarmingly simple. Then he unleashed his proposal. Would Yukito choose to be reincarnated? Yukito's jaw dropped. Disbelief ripped through him as he gasped, "Could that really be possible?" The god roared that it was possible. He was a god, after all. Your face ignited, excitement and hope exploding at the incredible prospect. The god thundered that the reincarnation would land in his world, not on Earth. Yukito's excitement flipped on a dime into raw shock, leaving him frozen, jaw slack in total disbelief. Panic ripped through him as he screamed he had no combat skills and couldn't survive in a fantasy world. The god thundered a promise. He would never abandon him there. Help was coming. He closed the distance, grin razor sharp, and dangled any gift Grant Yukito desired as a special bonus. The god thundered that this gift's power could forge him into a hero or crown him king. Yukito's imagination erupted into dazzling visions of a pampered life. Endless luxury, never a day of work. He fantasized about amassing a harem and indulging every one of his desires. The god roared it was possible. There was no evil demon lord left to stand in the way. You could have leaned in, voice low, and dared to ask what would happen if he refused the offer. The god roared that he'd be forced to wait 100 or 200 years for his next life. Yukito's world tilted when he heard there was no guarantee he'd be reborn as a human again. Dread slammed into him. The god slammed a choice before him: reincarnate into his world or do nothing. You all eyed the offer and finally admitted there was something he desperately wanted to do. The god urged him on, declaring it was fine even if it had nothing to do with fantasy. A fierce new resolve burned in his eyes. You could have sworn he was going to make soba. For a heartbeat, the god froze, blindsided by such a simple, sudden request. He blinked, confusion flaring as a lone bead of sweat slid down his brow. A jolt hit him. Yukito worked at the soba shop, and he barked, "Is that really the wish you want?" Yukito bellowed, cutting him off. "This isn't just any soba shop!" He slammed his fist, eyes blazing, and roared, "It has to be Nadai Tsujisoba!" The god turned it over in his hands, murmuring Sujisoba to himself like a secret spell. He leaned in and pressed Yukito for every detail, eyes blazing as he vowed to craft the perfect gift. Yukito's cheeks flamed with excitement as he lunged forward, eager to explain exactly what Nadid Sugisoba was. He erupted into a passionate, vivid portrait of every corner of his beloved restaurant, laying it bare before the listing god. The god leaned in, devouring every word and searing the crucial details into the gift. His fingers snapped like thunder. The god proclaimed the gift ready. He crowed that Yukito was the first in his world to ever ask for a sober shop. Yukito's face went stone cold as he hunted for one final confirmation that his dream could actually come true. The god flashes a sly grin and declares every last detail of the soba shop a tantalizing secret. The god thunders that leveling up is non-negotiable, and Yukito freezes as panic explodes in him at the thought of facing monsters. Relief detonated inside Yukito when God announced he could level up without stepping into battle. The god booms that if Yukito shouts "status open" in the new world, he'll learn every single detail. The god thunders that it's time to send Yuki on his way, demanding to know if he's prepared. He swallows hard, admits he's utterly unready, then steels himself. There's no choice left. The god flashed a knowing smile and dropped a single cool, "Well then." With a thunderous sweep, the god catapulted him into the world and roared a final farewell to the child of Earth. Brilliant light erupts from Yukito's body as the god crowns him with a blessing and sends him off to Arliss. The god shuts his eyes and sends a final wordless prayer out for the boy's journey. He stakes everything on this child of Earth. Sure, they'll sweep a fresh wind through our world. In an instant, the divine realm shatters and hurls us crashing back into the world of Arrow. Time snaps back to the present. We're outside the mysterious Nadaitsugasoba shop. Two empty bowls stare back, one clutching a fork, the other balanced with chopsticks, declaring the meal over. Alvil bellows praise for the kokosoba, declaring it flowed into his weary bones and breathed life back into him. He bows with cold precision and declares, "I am Hyzen Marcus Elvale, Lord of the Stoamane." He throws open the doors and reveals his companion, Gashu Adamant, the commander of the Alvil Knights. A grin cracks across Yukito's face as he registers he's standing in the presence of very important, high-ranking nobles. A private triumph surges through him. His soba conquers even the gourmands of this other world. With a crisp, polite bow, he declares, "I'm Hatsushiro Yukito, the manager. He declares his name with a dazzling, confident grin. Yukito Hatsushiro. The easy calm shatters as Elvale and Adaman zero in on him, their eyes razor-sharp once more. Alvale's face hardened into stone as he demanded to know if Yukito had a family name. Yukito blinked, baffled, and shot back. Back home, everyone has a family name. It's totally normal. Alvale's grin sharpened as he pointed out this was exactly the strange part, leaving Yukito utterly baffled. The Marquis leans in, jaw tight, and snaps. I've got a few questions I must ask the young manager. He demanded to know why Yukito had set up his shop out here in the middle of nowhere. His voice snaps with fury as he demands to know how a shop could be built here without his permission. He swears the shop materialized out of thin air one day. A jolt ripped through you all as the powerful men fixed him with razor-sharp suspicion. I brace to pry if he won't answer, but Yukito cuts in and snaps, "No." Yukito shuts his eyes, steel coiling through him, and nods. He'll tell them everything. His story doesn't begin here. It ignites on a distant planet called Earth. He bursts into the tale of how, after his death, he jolted awake in a heaven-like realm and came face to face with a god. He confesses he was once a human from Earth. His life violently snatched away in a sudden, tragic accident. Then the god thrust a blazing, reality-shattering ability into his hands. That gift ripped him from his reality and hurled him into another. In an instant, he stood alone on a dusty road, swallowed by a vast, empty wilderness. He staggered, dazed and reeling, eyes snapping across the scene. Could this really be the other world? He felt a memory slam into him. God's final command. Speak the words, status open. He drew a deep, steady breath, clenched his fists like steel, and thundered the command into the air. A translucent screen snapped into existence before him, flooding his vision with his stats and the sudden reveal of his new gift. The screen dared you to tap the gift's name, tap it and more details spill out. He gaped at the interface, his brain short-circuiting at the system's game-like rules. He slammed a finger against the screen, sneering that the god could have chosen a name dripping with atmosphere. Every detail screamed his power. He could summon the Nadai Tsugasoba shop at will. It would stand as an exact, down-to-the-last detail replica of the very Suitabashi branch he was meant to manage. Sobs exploded from him as the truth slammed into him. This god had also given him a home and endless supplies. Alone in the endless wilderness, he grappled with the shock of his new reality and the raw electric power pulsing through him. With the coast clear, he seized the moment and put his new ability to the test. He sucked in a razor-sharp breath, steeled every nerve, and readied himself to summon his dream. He bellowed until his voice cracked. "Nada itsuju soba, Isekai'D." A brilliant flash tore through the air, and the familiar building snapped into being right before his eyes. The air snapped like a live wire as raw power exploded out of that sudden, impossible creation. The finished shop stood before him, and he froze. Speech ripped away as joy and amazement surged through him. This really was the Suitabashi branch right here. He finishes his tale and reveals the truth. That's exactly how he just appeared in this world. He snaps, "That is all," finishing his tale while Avale and Adamant fall mute. Alvel smirks, revealing he'd suspected from the start that Yukito was far from ordinary. They craned their neck and gaped, shock etched on their face as they tried to decode what the Marquis could possibly mean. Alvale leans in and spits out the local's name for them. Strangers. The revelation hung in the air like a guillotine, instantly shredding the young shopkeeper's world. You'd repeat the unfamiliar word on loop, clawing at it until you could squeeze out its meaning. Stranger? Alvil reveals that, rare as it is, strangers have slipped into Arl on multiple occasions. For his final reveal, he rips the veil off a boy from Kenya, a face frozen from nearly 30 years ago. Drop the bomb, he's from Earth, he hails from Japan. The Marquis has never even heard of Nihon and scoffs that any trace of it could still exist. A wave of disappointment crashes over you all as the truth hits. No other Japanese person has ever been here. A bolt of electric realization slams through him. Wait a minute. A fierce certainty surges through him. He'll blaze the trail and unleash the wonders of Sober across this land. He's mid-celebration when the Marquis booms his name and snaps him straight back into reality. Alvil sends Yukito a formal invitation. Bring your shop and anchor it in his domain, the city of Alvil. He declares Elvale once reigned as the capital and now towers as the kingdom's second-largest city. With the town bursting with people, he's sure customers will swarm his soba stall. He implores Yukito to place his shop under his protection, and Yukito's face lights up, thrilled by the offer. He envisions every exhausted city soul he'd meet, pressing steaming, soul-warming bowls of soba into their hands. He's sold on the big city's buzz, then leans in and demands to know what patronage actually requires. Alvil insists strangers are anomalies and commands we shield them from anyone who means them harm. Ruthless power players ravenously covet the knowledge and technology forged by their gifts. You could hurl every test at him and reduce his gift to a plain, sober shop. Nothing miraculous, nothing more. Alvil snaps back. A shop that churns out endless food is an unheard-of, terrifying power. An army that marches without needing food becomes a terrifying, unstoppable weapon on the battlefield. Unprotected, he'd be a walking target. Aggressive nations like the Weinheim Empire would pounce on him in an instant. Yukito finally recognizes the threat. The truth slams into me. I need you to be my shield. Alvel thunders that a noble's duty is to shield any stranger who brings innovation to the kingdom. He plants his banner over a slice of Elvale and guards it, collecting taxes as his price. He snarled, "Do you really believe the people of Alvale won't come to eat his sober?" The great marquis then drops into a desperate bow, begging the young shopkeeper. Adaman staggered, a raw cry tearing from him as his lord sank to his knees in a breathtaking act of humility. The formidable noble stayed bowed, his plea pressing like a weight into the shop's silence. Yukito's jaw drops as the towering, powerful man bows his head to shield him. A revelation slams into him. Alvil isn't a bad person, he's a truly good man. Heat floods his face, resolve hardens in his eyes. He knows he must grant this heartfelt plea. He plunges into a deep, formal bow, sealing his acceptance and handing his fate over to the marquis. Alvale and Adaman erupted into relieved, ecstatic grins the moment he accepted their offer. Yukito shoots a hand up and declares, "I have one request of my own." The marquis and his knight lean in, eyes hungry, desperate to decipher what ails him. Deal sealed, they charged into the unknown, racing toward a brand new life. The three men explode into laughter, the tension melting away as Elvil leans in and asks about the condition. Yukito slams down one iron condition: secure a prime location, nothing less will do, to open his new shop. The carriage cuts through the night as Marquis Avea lifts his chin and unveils his sprawling domain with triumphant pride. Yukato's cheeks flamed with wonder as he burst out, "Alvale is enormous!" He drinks in the medieval streets. No electricity, just a vast, crushing scale that swallows the horizon. Against the full moon's glow, a magnificent castle explodes into view, and Yukito stands frozen, awe burning in his chest. A veil of mist screams, this is his domain. Lakensit could pass for Germany's Neuschwanstein castle. A maiden in a traditional uniform sweeps forward and plunges into a deep, reverent bow. She whisks Yukito into a guest room so lavish it might as well be a throne room. Alvale grins, bids Kito good night, and proposes they reconvene in the morning. The sun explodes over the horizon, hurling its first light across the world and heralding the birth of a brand new day. A bare breakfast glares from the table. Hard bread, a salad, and one boiled egg. Over breakfast, Elvel leans in and asks Yukito if he slept well, and Yukito beams and thanks him. You'd bite through rock-hard, parched bread, while the salad tasted of nothing but salt. He eyed his meal, and the truth slammed into him. This was the typical breakfast in this world. Alvale bellowed that he'd carved out a plot of land for Yuki to shop. Yukito's eyes widened as he asked for confirmation, and Elvale roared, claiming the land as his. A towering stone wall rose before them, and Yukito and his companions froze, their voices swallowed by the sight. Yukito's cheeks flare scarlet with excitement as he blurts, "Is this truly the designated location?" Avel throws his arm toward the wall, revealing that beyond it sprawls the castle garden, then leans in and asks for his opinion. You might tense up about security, but Alvale scoffs, laughter exploding as he assures him it's no problem. The Marquis blares it's the perfect spot, handy for him and for everyone else. Yukito hesitates, then slams down a single condition he insists on before he'll agree. He pleads to be allowed to serve not only the castle's residents, but the common people as well. He poured out his dream. He wants everyone to enjoy his sobriety. He refuses the private chef label. He wants his food on every table. Alvale's jaw tightens. With a solemn nod, he surrenders every policy of his shop to Yukito's complete control. Joy exploded in Yukito as he poured out a raw, heartfelt thanks to the Marcus. Alveil's grin split his face, buzzing with excitement as he barked for him to summon his soba shape. Now, all of you could lock in, concentrate, and prepare to unleash his powerful, one-of-a-kind gift. He roars the command, tearing open a portal as his otherworldly soba shop materializes. The modern Nadia Tsujisoba storefront snaps into existence, slotting flawlessly into the castle wall. Alveli roared with laughter, eyes wide as the shot tore clean through the stone. You couldn't stop grinning, certain this was the gloriously mismatched sight he'd imagined. Two knights snap to attention as a building suddenly materializes before them, leaving them frozen and desperate to know what it is. A veil whispers, and they each down a bowl of soba before marching back to the castle. You could all agree to shout that he'd already wolfed down his own breakfast earlier. The Marquis confessed he'd deliberately eaten sparingly, saving room to savor the soba. Pull them over to try the new menu and watch Alvel's jaw drop when the surprise update hits. He flashes a grin and proclaims his gift has leveled up, unlocking a whole arsenal of new dishes. Two steaming bowls slam onto the table. Wakame soba and Horenso soba. Alvel sinks his teeth in, his eyes melting shut in pure bliss as he bursts out, "Delicious!" A text box explodes onto the screen, declaring Yukito's gift and revealing the new menu unlocked when he leveled up. Armored knights gaped into their bowls, confusion crackling across their faces as the unfamiliar food stared back. Alvel flashes a confident grin, shoves the plate forward, and swears the otherworldly dish will blow their minds. One night he hoisted the bowl with trembling hands, heart pounding as he braced for the uncertain first bite. His eyes shot open, stunned, utterly captivated by a mind-blowing rush of flavor. The knights explode into thunderous acclaim, jaws dropping at the soup's savage heat and its bizarre toppings. Elvil strides away, vowing he'll return, and Yukito watches him go, calling out a heartfelt thank you for his patronage. You grin at the clock, eyes locked on the minute hand as you wait for the next customer to burst through the door. The clock gnaws at the seconds, nobody arrives, and his smile melts into nervous sweat. He slumps against the counter, voice cracking as he cries that he has absolutely no customers. He cracked the door and peered out. Locals lingered at the street's edge, eyes sharp, deliberately keeping their distance from his shop. His pulse spikes. Should he burst outside and hustle up business himself? Suddenly, Commander Adaman bursts in, flanked by his knights, proclaiming they've come to pay a visit. Adaman snaps that morning duties had them tied up, and they've come now for a meal. You beamed and slid the new menu into their hands, instantly snagging the commander's attention. Two steaming, irresistible bowls of the new soba burst into view, every slurp-ready noodle and glossy aromatic broth rendered in mouth-watering detail. Adamant's gaze snapped to the new toppings as his subordinates buzzed, frantically guessing what they could be. The commander booms that the meal is delicious and dares his men to eat without fear. A young knight hesitates, then spears a bite with his fork and nibbles it, a slight blush coloring his cheek. He slurps the noodles, eyes snapping shut as that one-of-a-kind flavor floods his senses. His eyes snapped open as amazement surged through him, while his companion watched, mouth agape in stunned surprise. The whole host of knights is now slurping their sober, the hall erupting in raucous, gleeful slurps. At Yukito beams, the satisfied men clamored for second helpings. Their bowls lay scraped clean, only chopsticks left inside like silent trophies. They vanish into the night, swearing they'll return to tell their comrades. You could swoop in, snatch up the empty bowls, and grin at the young men's ravenous appetites. He freezes mid-task, confusion flaring across his face as a sharp sound snags his attention. A notification erupted across his screen. He gasped when he realized his gift had leveled up. The text panel explodes into view, spelling out his level 3 gift and unveiling the new menu items. You'd salivate at the new additions, Hiyashi Tanuki Soba included. He stops dead as a dawning realization slams across his face. He gapes. The next level demands a staggering 100 customers. He clutches his head, panic roaring, and then it hits him. The requirement has exploded tenfold. Panic evaporated as a determined, confident smile spread across his face. The words curry rice and curry rice exploded across the panel in blinding, dramatic flashes. The soba set unveils a mouth-watering spread of curry rice that practically leaps off the plate. Yukito slammed his fist shut, eyes burning with the absolute conviction that curry is loved by everyone. He roars that no one can resist the mouth-watering, jaw-dropping intensity of curry. He beams, remembering how a simple Korean soba set kept him alive through the relentless, sleepless grind of drawing manga. He rubs his hands together, excitement crackling. He's making his beloved curry rice again. The bell above the door cried out the instant a customer's feet crossed the threshold. Washing dishes, Yukito jolts as a sudden, sharp crash rips through the quiet. He whips around and snaps out a crisp, cheerful, "Welcome!" His grin snaps shut, confusion ripping across his face as his guest steps into view. A lone figure in full plate armor loomed inside the shop's entrance, a statue of steel and utter silence. The visitor is a young woman, tear tracks carving her face as sobs rack her. You inched forward, voice tight, and asked if she was a customer. She slams her gauntleted hands over her face and unleashes a raw, aching wail that rips through the air. Grief shatters her, and she collapses to her knees, while Yukito stands frozen, shock written across his face. The camera zips in on the shop's sign, Nadai Tsujisoba, hanging high above the street. Clad in armor and trembling, she forces out an apology for breaking into tears and causing a scene at the entrance. Lean in, grin, and declare she's starving. Her stomach is growling. He gaped, pulse hammering, desperate to know why that person suddenly burst into tears the moment they stepped inside. She snaps her gaze up to him, eyes igniting with razor-sharp focus. She pleads, hope crackling in her voice. "Is this truly a Nadi Tsujisoba shop?" Yukito springs into view, smirks, and declares, "This place is mine." She clutches her chest and exhales a long, shuddering sigh of pure relief. She leans in, voice dropping to a breathy whisper as she steels herself to ask. She blurts, "Do you have Hayashi Tanuki soba?" And Yukito's jaw drops, stunned into silence. Clasping her hands together, she begs again, hope blazing in her eyes. Yukito's breath catches at her stone-cold expression, panic flaring as he asks himself, how could she know about soba? She seizes his hands, desperation raw as she begs to be served a bowl of Hayashi Tanuki soba. He locks his gaze on the mysterious woman, a barrage of questions detonating in his mind. He vows, if she truly wants soba, he'll leap at the chance to give it to her. Energy surged through him. He swept her inside with a grin and shot, "Grab any open seat." Relief floods her face, gratitude blazing in her eyes as she rushes forward to thank him for his kindness. Back in his kitchen, Yukito steels his mind for the task ahead. He plunges the strainer into the bubbling pot and hoists the steaming, freshly boiled noodles out. He tips the pot and scalding water pours away, leaving a mound of fine, grayish noodles gleaming. He plunges them into ice-cold water, shocking them into a perfectly firm, snappy bite. He locks his gaze on the waiting bowls and explodes into motion, assembling the final dish. Like a master, he deftly lifts the steaming tangle of noodles and nestles it into the waiting serving bowl. He baptized the bed of noodles in a shimmering, ice-cold, sober broth. His station bristles with toppings, mounds of chopped green onions and glossy wakame, primed to slam flavor into every bowl. Next, his gaze snaps to the crispy golden tempura bits. He steadies his hands and scoops a generous, crackling mound of crunchy topping. He crowns the bowl with a heaping avalanche of crispy tempura shards. He sweeps forward the finished Hayashi Tanuki soba, flawless, steaming, and practically begging to be devoured. He beams, urging her to enjoy it, and she answers with a heartfelt, "Thank you." His gaze locks onto her, curiosity igniting as he traces every nuance. She clasps her gloved hands together, folding them into a fierce, heartfelt prayer. Yukito freezes, eyes wide, utterly blindsided by the flawless, old-school grace of her traditional Japanese etiquette. A serene smile curls across her lips as she clasps her hands and breathes "Itadakimasu" in thanks for the meal. In Japan, "Itadakimasu" rings out before the first bite, a profound, heartfelt thank you to the food and everyone who made it possible. Curiosity clawed at him as he tried to unmask who this mysterious woman really was. The shopkeeper froze, jaw slack and mind racing, completely dumbfounded by what she'd just done. A flashback rips open the past to introduce Lutia Céline. She was once a French woman. Since she was a kid, Japanese anime gripped her soul. She lived and breathed every episode. She'd haunt bookstores, diving into the aisles until manga pulled her into whole new worlds. Fresh out of high school, she plunged into Tokyo's chaos to study art, determined to become a manga artist. She juggled university lectures by day and forged her art at night, practicing relentlessly until every stroke rang true. While watching her favorite anime, she saw isekai stories erupt into unstoppable popularity. Curiosity gnawed at her. She dove online and hunted down every other story she could find. She unearthed Japan's largest web novel site, a glittering treasure trove of stories she couldn't wait to dive into. She dove into the pages, curiosity blazing at the endless selection spread out before her. Hours vanished as she devoured each tale, utterly swallowed by their spell. Cicadas exploded into a frantic chorus, screaming that Japan's scorching summer had arrived. She fell head over heels for Japanese food, fixated on a tiny soba shop right by her university. One day she was handed a steaming bowl of their signature Hayashi Tanuki soba. Chilled noodles crowned with crunchy tempura bits practically radiated cool, irresistible refreshment. I stumbled into dashi broth culture and it blew my mind, a savory revelation worlds away from French cuisine. Slurping icy soba under the blistering summer sun felt like pure salvation. The flavor exploded across her tongue, flooding her senses with pure, unfiltered joy. She devoured every last bite, grinning with total satisfaction after that incredible meal. She crumpled, utterly floored by the Hayashi Tanuki soba in a single taste. Before long, she was a fixture. The staff could spot her from across the room. Her aunt wed a Japanese man and planted roots in Tokyo, becoming her on-the-ground lifeline. Her kind uncle often whisked her off to his favorite sobasha, just around the corner. The three of them clustered together, savoring a steaming, soul-warming meal. He shoved a cold beer and a crispy, savory croquette into her hands, and her face lit up with pure joy. She watched as he savored his food, contentment blazing across his face. He tipped his head back and swallowed a long, satisfying gulp of his cold beer. He gushed about how amazing it was, and she smiled at the simple joy radiating from him. Her aunt snapped at her uncle every time he cracked open a bottle. Lucia was still too young to drink beer. She swore she'd raise a glass with them the moment she hit 20. The tavern's cozy glow pulled her in, and she was smitten the moment she stepped inside. She swore with all her heart that those bright, ordinary days would never end. During summer break, hijackers stormed the airport shuttle she was on. Chaos exploded into a deafening gunfight between terrorists and police, bullets tearing through the air. The terrorist was cut down as he fired a burst of bullets straight at her. The muzzle flash seared the air. Her last thought died mid-breath and sank into silence. She'd later learn her life had been snuffed out in a single instant. She staggers forward, a sharp gasp ripping out of her, eyes frozen wide in lingering shock. She jolted awake in a realm that shimmered like heaven, and a god from another world stood before her. The god flung open the gates to his world of swords and magic and welcomed her, Arul. Lucia Chelen inhaled sharply. The dawn of her new life had arrived. She felt nothing as death arrived, yet the moment still slammed down with crushing sorrow. The worst part? She never even uttered a goodbye to her family. A jolt of electrifying realization slammed into her. Straight out of her favorite anime, she jolted awake, reborn in another world. She shot her hand up, eyes blazing, volunteering to save the world and vowing to take on any epic mission. The god reached down and crowned her with a blazing, unstoppable power. She unleashed the legendary Sword King, her new, terrifyingly powerful ability. A fierce grin split her face as she vowed she was ready to rush out and save the world. Her new comrades shot back. "What evil forces? The world's peaceful." They swore the great wars had died out ages ago. They'd already seized the demon lord, and a handful of onlookers watched, faces crumpling with disappointment. Horror slammed into her as she discovered the world was eerily peaceful, her gift nothing but dead weight. Her party shouted, "Let's be dungeon explorers!" and the idea landed sounding laughably unheroic. Her adventures were disasters, leaving her comrades battered, bleeding, and helpless. Pressed into service, she stitched her incessantly whining party back together with fierce healing magic. She railed against the pitiful rations, rock-hard bread and a bowl of flavorless, watery soup. Lonely nights clawed at her like teeth, the hardest part of her disappointing new life. She tossed and turned, each desperate shift failing to win her even a scrap of comfort or rest. Tears streamed as she sobbed, howling that she'd never become the hero from her favorite anime. She forced out her mother's name, her father's, and every name she ached for. She ached to hurl herself back to earth and devour her beloved bowl of soba. She craved soba so fiercely it devoured her thoughts whole. Her eyes snapped to the Nadai Tsuja soba, jutting proudly from the castle wall. Doubt clawed at her. Had her mind conjured this after obsessing over Earth? Her breath snagged when the shopkeeper's features revealed he was Japanese, and a burning question hit her. How was he here? How did he haul a gas stove and other tools all the way from Earth into this world? Questions swarmed her mind, but she tore into her meal first, whispering a grateful thanks. Even the boldest words crumbled before this magnificent bowl of soba. Her hand steady, she shot out and seized a pair of chopsticks. She ripped them apart. A familiar, satisfying crack split the air. Her stomach flipped and nerves surged. She hadn't tasted this in 2 years. Her chopsticks quivered between her fingers, poised over the first bite like a held breath. She steadied her hand and hoisted a perfect, glistening mouthful of noodles to her lips. She drew them close, and a lone drop of broth slipped free, brimming with promise. Light skittered over the soba, each strand gleaming, and she stood transfixed by their simple, aching beauty. A satisfying slurp erupts as she plunges into the first bite and savors the moment. That firm, chewy bite obliterates hard, tasteless bread and turns it into a relic from another world. After 2 long years, the rich aroma of soba slams into her, flooding every sense. Her eyes snag the savory tempura bits clinging to the delicious noodles. A small, contented smile flickers across her lips as she chooses. Crunchy, fragrant flavors erupt into a dazzling firework of pure deliciousness. She murmurs under her breath, stunned at how truly delicious this simple meal is. Next, she plunges into the guacamole. Its unique texture snaps into place like it was made for her. She savored the sharp, refreshing bite of the green onions as their flavor exploded across her tongue. She dove headfirst back into the satisfying crunch of the savory temperaments. She devours bite after bite, powerless to stop. She annihilated the bowl, leaving it empty. A blazing testament to how much she loved every bite. Yukito pressed, "Did you enjoy it?" She lit up and proclaimed, "It was delicious!" He pivots to leave, and she slams her hand on his arm, freezing him mid-step. She rips out a piercing cry, yanking the shopkeeper and a nearby customer into stunned shock. She lunges forward, eyes blazing, snarling that he's a reincarnated stranger. She presses him harder and nails it. He's from Earth, Japan. Yukito froze, jaw dropping and mind reeling. How had she seen right through him? Panic explodes as the warning to keep his identity secret slams into him. Doubt gnaws at him. Maybe she's only a dungeon explorer chasing rumors. He remembered his gift's shield flaring to life, and certainty slammed into him. She couldn't be trying to hurt him. Panic laced his voice as he blurted, "How could you possibly know my secret?" She erupts in a guilty laugh and blurts an apology as her sudden accusation jolts him. She beams, then drops the bomb. She's a reincarnator too. He reels, voice cracking. "You're a reincarnator too, like me?" He glares at his reflection, every strange feature screaming that he's an anomaly in this world. The locals adored this Grand Duke. At night, he was a pure Caucasian. The woman standing before him bore unmistakable Caucasian features, too. She swears she blends in like a local, but her roots trace all the way back to France. A searing image of the Arctotrium rips through his mind. A memory slams into him. The last stranger found here was a boy from Kenya. She knew strangers were protected, but panic flared at the thought of corrupt nobles turning her into bait. She burst onto the outskirts of Olor, a place bled dry by a Viscount infamous for his corruption. Thank the heavens, the Grand Duke of this domain abhors every trace of that corruption. His gut clenches. He knows the raw terror of being at the mercy of someone powerful. A thunderclap of realization hits him. He'd been insanely lucky with his own situation. She erupts into laughter as it hits her. She never properly introduced herself. She plants her name like a flag, Lutia Selen, and he clutches a scorching Suksero Yukito. The name Hatsushiro snaps her to a halt. Recognition sparks behind her eyes. She leans in and drops the bomb. Her aunt married a Japanese man, also named Hatsushiro. She bursts out, "What a coincidence! My uncle's name is Hatsushiro Yukihito." You watch those eyes snap wide, raw shock flooding them at the name. He clamps her shoulders and snarls, "Say it, Yukihito!" He blurted out, "Is your aunt's name Amanda?" The question hits Loti like a thunderclap, leaving him utterly speechless. He drops a bombshell. His older brother is also named Hatsushiro Yukihito. He thunders that the man she speaks of is his one and only brother. Stunned, she froze as the memory slammed into her. His brother had married a French woman named Amanda. Her maiden name, Montreux, snaps into his mind as their wedding photo bursts into focus. She nods sharply. The truth hits. Her aunt's maiden name was Amanda Montreux. He flung his eyes to the heavens, desperate to know what the god was thinking. Their jaws dropped. They'd both been in Tokyo and they'd never met. He buried himself in his manga, racing through deadlines and skipping every family visit. Grief slammed into her. He must have died before she came to Japan. She knew he had a brother who drew manga, but they'd never crossed paths. A lightning bolt realization explodes in her mind, snapping the world into sharp focus. She crowns him a god, then grins and confesses she owns every single copy of his manga. Devastation ripped through her when his series slammed shut with no sequel. His work ignited her. She raced to Japan to become an artist. Her dream exploded into silence when hijackers murdered her in the chaos. Reborn with the Sword King's gift, she clung to one burning hope: to become a hero. After 2 brutal years of hardship, weariness crushed her spirit and she refuses to fight on. You slid a gentle, reassuring hand onto her shoulder. He tells her, respect roaring in his voice, that surviving alone this long is nothing short of remarkable. The world's harsh reality crushed the fantasy she'd painted in her head. Alone, burdened by a useless daily gift, she's been living through relentless pain. She drops to her knees, voice breaking, and confesses she can't go on anymore. She's bone-tired of watching her friends suffer and sick of living in terror of death. Yukito understands, but the gift she chose has become a cage she can't escape. He watches his old burnout stare back at him from the hollows of her exhausted eyes. In that heartbeat he vows, if anything can save her, Soba can. He slammed the truth at her. She'd gone to art school to learn painting. He declares she can draw brilliantly. She doesn't need any special gift. She insists no one should be reduced to nothing more than their gift. She feels crushed, convinced she can't compete with those who have artistic gifts. He throws her a lifeline. Come work with me. He knows her heart beats for Soba. That makes her the perfect candidate. He bursts out, "You should work here. I need the help." She worships Soba and could single-handedly obliterate anyone who dares threaten the shop or his niece. He proclaims Soba a brand new genre here, a one-of-a-kind opportunity begging to be seized. This is her chance to hang up her sword and work by his side. She whispers the offer like a secret, weighing each syllable as she decides whether to join forces. She's dying to say yes, but panic over her inexperience yanks her back. He steps forward, confidence radiating, and declares, "I'm the manager. I'll teach you." He smirks and jokes that he, too, met his end on his very first day at work. She locks eyes with him as a strange bond ignites, binding their fates together. A thought hits him. This is a make-or-break job interview. He dangles a steady paycheck, lays out regular meals, and puts you up in a room upstairs. He pleads again, voice cracking. Will she come work with him at the shop? She lifts her gaze to him, cheeks aflame and eyes glittering. She drops into a deep, reverent bow, entrusting herself completely to his protection. He flashed a confident grin, shot out his hand, and welcomed her onto the team. When he breathes her name, new hope ignites across her face. Their hands crash together in a firm, unyielding shake, sealing the agreement. The next day explodes open as Lutia launches herself into the first day of her new life. She's shot into action, rushing over to greet the 2 new customers with an electric grin. She's a natural at welcoming customers, flashing a polished, professional smile. For now, she's running payments. Cooking's too complex to tackle yet. You could have watched her thoughtful, satisfied smile bloom across his face. Lutia glides to the table and takes their order, the blushing, adoring men hanging on her every word. She swoops into another table of equally smitten knights. Their face flushes with admiration. Your eyes snap across the room. Every patron a man, a living testament to Lucha's raw, magnetic pull. Realization hits him like thunder. A flood of new customers is pouring in, and he can level up right now. A level up notification blazes into existence. His gift now includes a steaming, mouth-watering bowl of curry rice. Inside the castle, 2 nobles huddled, trading scandalized whispers about the strange new diner lodged in the castle wall. Lord Lilycone beams and eagerly beckons his stern companion, Scent, to join him at the table for a meal. Scent shot the invitation down with a flat refusal, snapping that he has no interest in such things. Steam coils from the curry rice, and Lutia's eyes widen as a sudden, soul-stirring awe hits her. Tears streak her cheeks as she whispers, "Curry rice," her voice cracking with raw, aching emotion. Their jaws dropped at her tears, but she insisted crying was the ultimate way to eat rice. A grin claws across his face as the memory hits. It's been far too long, years, since she last ate white rice. He reveals the soba shop's curry is steeped in dashi, the secret that makes it the perfect match. Lucio declared the shop would thrive, and you nodded, electrified by her contagious, eager support. He proclaims a blazing ambition. He'll turn this sober shop into the city's most beloved spot. The scene snaps into the Alvale Knights commander's office. News slams into Adaman. He's been assigned to guard the stranger, Hatsushiro. The knight sent staggered back, screaming, "No, this can't possibly be him!" Markiel V locks his gaze like cold steel, every feature carved in stone. His decision sealed. Sent's mind reels, cheeks burning and speechless, utterly unable to grasp the bizarre command. With a calm, unyielding smile, he declares Sent will take the mission. Sent roars that he must be the one to do it, before anyone else. He roars that those menial chores are utterly beneath a knight like himself. He broods over his idleness until the truth slams into him. He has nothing important to do. Lily Cone clawed her way from commoner birth into knighthood, a rare title that commands fierce respect. Raised on a struggling farm, he honed a raw combat gift and fought his way into the ranks as a soldier. On patrol, he stumbled onto a gang of bandits and, all by himself, tore them apart. His fearless deeds christened him Lily Cone and vaulted him straight into the ranks of the minor nobility. He rocketed up the ranks, becoming an idol to the common soldiers. Even knights born to noble houses couldn't help but revere him. Promoted to high-ranking knight, gold flooded his coffers while his duties evaporated. His promotion plunged him into a crushing, maddening boredom. He crumples by the castle wall, ennui crashing over him like a suffocating tide. Motivation drains from him, leaving a fierce ache for the honest, soil-stained labor of a farmer. Idleness claws at him until it hurts. He's desperate to land any job. A fellow knight bursts in, breathless, shouting that Commander Adaman demands his presence. Sent freezes, heart slamming. Why would the commander be hunting him? He freezes at the doorway, fear knotting his gut as he imagines everyone has already spotted his growing discontent. He bellowed his arrival, and a voice from within beckoned him in. He steps into the office, snaps into a flawless bow, and pleads pardon for his humble intrusion. His eyes snapped open, shock stealing his breath at the sight before him. At the desk sits not a mere commander, it's Grand Duke Hyzen himself. Overwhelmed, he crumples to one knee and bows, voice trembling as he addresses the Grand Duke with reverent awe. Oevel tells him to relax, then fires off a blunt apology to Stammer for his low rank. Adam and Good snapped at him to relax, stay tense, and he'd make the Duke look intimidating. Sent's gaze snapped up, his motives still cloaked as he faced such high nobility. I fired veiled signals for him to sit, but he dug in his heels and stayed standing. Alvel insists, warning their conversation will drag on until he can't even stay standing. Reluctantly, Sent slumps into the chair and blurts a quick excuse as he settles. Elvale fires off an apology for the lack of notice, plunging them into flustered surprise. Sent implores the Duke, the kingdom's highest noble, not to bow his head to him. Adaman leans in, voice dropping to a charged whisper. What's coming is a secret he and the Duke alone keep. Elville snaps at Sen. Do you remember your order? Protect the shopkeeper, Yukito Hatsushiro? Sent's memory jolted to a strange shop and its owner, who wielded a mysterious summoning gift. Shock coils in him. Why would the Duke himself step into harm's way to shield a mere commoner? Sent shocks his superiors by confessing he's never once set foot in the shop. Alvale, a guest, gapes and demands to know how he'd never tasted this delicious food. Sent shrugs it off. He gets his meals at the dormitory, and that's enough. Alvel loomed, his expression burning with pure exasperation at the flimsy excuse. Sent's voice cracks as he asks, Did I do wrong? Alvel snaps, That's not the issue. He brushes it aside with a sharp flick and snaps. The only thing that matters is what's coming next. Alvel rips the veil off the great secret. Hatsushiro is a stranger, newly arrived in this world. Sent sprang to his feet, shock igniting through him as he demanded, Is this really true? Strangers are rare innovators who, armed with hard-earned knowledge, ripped open the future and propelled their world forward. It finally hits him why the Duke would personally stand guard over someone so priceless. He reels, asking why they'd chosen him to guard this monumental secret. Adamant barks his name, his face a stone mask as he steels himself to issue the order. He snaps the order again. Send, take the mission, guard Hatsushiro. Sent's face snapped into a mask of raw, unadulterated shock beneath the immense weight of responsibility. Beneath the city's open sky, he grapples with the revelation, its crushing weight settling over him. He clenched his jaw, let out a low, grim sound of resolve, and seized the new role. He kicks off his watch and plants himself outside the Nadai Sujisoba shop, eyes locked on every movement. He leans in and pokes the food model, baffled anyone would make noodles swim in soup. Alvale's words slam into him. He'd said he'd be glad to have this mission. Both his superiors raved that the soba was an exquisite, unmatched masterpiece. Doubt gnaws at him. He'd never eaten noodle dishes before he came to the city. A familiar voice slices through his thoughts, calling his name and yanking him back to reality. Orman, his old comrade, throws the door wide and beckons him inside for steaming soba. Nostalgia slams into him as he remembers Orman calling him Sensei-san before his promotion. The formal honorific Sama now cleaved a wide gulf between them. Orman clutches his stomach and slips inside, a fragile whisper of hesitation trailing in his wake. After a beat of doubt, Sense clenched his jaw, steeled himself, and finally plunged the spoon to his lips to taste the food. He bolts for the door, determination flaring. He's going into the shop, too. Inside, Lutia, the new waitress, blasts him with an impossibly cheerful welcome. He freezes when he spots a woman working, pulse spiking as one burning question erupts. Who is she? He'd heard that Hatsushiro was shouldering the entire shop all by himself. He barked at the young woman. Who are you? Reeling from her sudden appearance. She beams, proclaims she's the new hire, and briskly lays out who the managers inside are. She reaches for the phone to call the manager, but Scent cuts her off. It's not necessary. She steers him to a seat and he blurts a sheepish thanks that trips over itself. He drops into the seat, jaw set, eyes sweeping the room as he sizes up every face and shadow. Curiosity crackling, he leans in and probes the unfamiliar condiments and strange wooden sticks on the table. His gaze snaps to something else in the one-of-a-kind restaurant. His eyes snap to the menu, sleek and flawlessly professional, like something ripped straight from a high-class establishment. He shoots out a gloved hand, fingertips brushing the strange, glossy object. His eyes snap wide and shock rips through him the instant his fingers touch the menu. He gapes at the hard, gleaming paper, convinced it's forged from something not of this world. The art's so mouth-wateringly detailed it feels like someone pressed real food onto the page, daring you to snatch a bite. A neat little grin tugs at his lips as his eyes scan the menu. He spots the price, only $340. And his jaw drops at how insanely cheap it is. Scent Lily Cone gapes at the menu, disbelief exploding when she sees soba priced at a mere 340 coal. One burning question claws at him. How does the stranger running this place actually afford to keep it open? His gaze locks onto an unfamiliar plate. Curry rice, a mound of white grains drowned in glossy brown sauce. The cool day makes him shun anything cold and stay sober. The whole idea strikes him as strange. He scrutinized the menu, brow furrowing as skepticism carved itself across his face. His gaze snaps to an item labeled Horenzo Soba. His eyes snap wide at the green topping and he blurts, "Is that a boy?" He staggers back. Savoy, the rare vegetable grown only in the far northern villages, is right there before him. A memory surges back. Holberg buried in snow where his family labored as Savoy farmers. Nostalgia sparks in his eyes as he slips away, swallowed by his own thoughts. He remembers his mother slamming that bitter, stringy green onto the table, and every child recoiled. His grandparents howled with laughter, crowing that it was a grown-up flavor, way beyond what kids could appreciate. A young Scent winces as he remembers how he too battled to chew that stubborn, jaw-grating vegetable. His brother jabs him, demanding he eat the nutritious greens, but he scoffs and stays unimpressed. He remembers his brothers grinning, daring him to choke down the greasy foods he hated. Now the young boys at the next table clamor for their order as Lucia strides up to him. His eyes snapped to the strange, clicking pen Lutia used to take orders. Ludius beams, warmth flooding his smile as he leans in and asks what he'd like to order. Scent barked orders to the Horenzo Soba, convinced the pen was just another artifact from Earth. Lucia flashes a radiant grin and confidently confirms his order. She barks to the kitchen. "One Lorenzo Soba!" Yukito chirped cheerfully. Scent jumped. Completely oblivious the manager was standing right behind him. He steels himself, vowing to carry out his duty as the covert ops team keeps a silent watch from the shadows. He scans the shop and freezes. Every single customer is a man. The camera swoops in, revealing the soba shop's spare, spotless interior. He snaps to attention as Lydia hums a bright, cheerful tune. Suspecting it's a song from Earth, Lutia catches him off guard, sliding a complimentary glass of iced barley tea into his hands. He snatched the sparkling glass, delight exploding through him at the unexpected, lavish treat. Lutia barrels back in, roaring that his order is ready. She plants a tray down and slides the steaming bowl of Horenzo Soba squarely before him as steam curls into the air. The camera snaps into a tight, detailed close-up, laying bare the artfully arranged bowl of soba. Scent's gaze drops to the dish, a faint blush blooming on his cheeks as he's utterly mesmerized. He gapes at the broth, jaw dropping. How can a brown soup be perfectly clear? His gaze snaps to the rustic gray noodles, drifting like ghosts across the pristine soup. He watches the boiling bubbles dart away from a paper-thin garnish dancing in the rising steam. He devours the exquisite aroma, eyes snapping shut as bliss floods his senses. The moment it touched his tongue, he knew. This was the delicious soba his superiors had raved about. He rifles through the place settings for a fork or spoon, suspicion flaring that the waitress forgot to bring one. At a nearby table, a young boy snaps a pair of wooden chopsticks clean in two with a single decisive motion. Grinning triumphantly, the boy hoists the separated chopsticks like twin trophies and shows exactly how to use them. Sent's jaw snaps open. He gapes at the bizarre alien utensil like it's a relic from another world. The young boy gleefully slurps his noodles, each loud, satisfying slurp echoing with pure joy. Sent's gut twists. With a shaky gulp, he knows this is the proper way to eat here. He steels himself, embraces the shop's custom, and snatches the strange wooden sticks to eat. He fumbles, fingers slipping as he battles to pry the chopsticks apart himself. He leans in, lifts the spoon, and dares a cautious first sip of the soup. He hoists the bowl to his lips and steals a tiny, careful sip. The delicious flavor explodes across your tongue and slams into your senses. He slurps the gentle broth and is instantly blown away. Nothing like any meat or vegetable stock, it's shockingly delicious. He snaps his focus to the noodles and snatches up a few strands. He hoists the steaming noodles to his mouth and slurps them loudly. The chewy texture and heavenly rustic aroma sweep him away. Warmth surges through him as he savors the taste. A grin splits his face as the reason his superiors were so excited finally snaps into focus. It hits him. The steaming bowl of soba is the thing that soothed their aching teenage hearts. Warm-up complete, he zeroed in on the main event. Every fiber of his being locked onto the pile of Savoy. It hits him like a blow. 15 long years since he left his home. 10 years had passed since he last ate Savoy. Its flavor yanked him straight back into the past. He pinches a single emerald piece of vegetable between his chopsticks and lifts it up with deliberate care. He locks onto the deep emerald green, suspecting it's an entirely different variety. He raises the piece of Savoy to his lips and takes his first bite. His eyes snap open, shock ripping through him as he clamps his teeth shut. The tender leaf snaps with a crisp, satisfying crunch that jolts him. He gulps, his mind reeling as that unexpected flavor detonates his senses. He gapes as the once tough, bitter vegetable melts into tender bites, its flavor bursting rich and perfectly balanced. He snaps his eyes shut, drinking in the deep, intoxicating flavor. He's flung back into his childhood, and it hits him. The raw, unmistakable taste of his homeland. A sly, knowing smirk dances on his lips. He remembers how he and his brothers lit into the Savoy, their voices snapping with complaint. Tears pool in his eyes. The thing he loathed as a child tastes so delicious now. He bites again. The flavor rips off his denial. He never actually hated it. Tears spill as memories of his happy family crash over him while he savors the wonderful food. He freezes as it hits him. The last letter he sent home was 2 years ago. He vows to pen a letter home soon, telling his family exactly how he's holding up. After grinding himself to the bone, he was convinced he'd earned a long overdue trip back home. At another table, mid-bite, Elf freezes as he watches the night itself burst into tears. She wonders if his tears were nothing but a raw reaction to the food's jaw-dropping deliciousness. Elf Tessaria's grin blooms, pure bliss lighting her eyes as she declares the otherworldly feast absolutely astonishing. Time jerks back a week, dropping us onto the street outside the mysterious soba shop. Triumph surged through Tessaria. She told herself, "I've finally arrived." She plants herself in front of the building and proclaims to Jisoba, "That's Nadi." The elven gift researcher crackles with excitement, charging into the legendary otherworldly cafeteria to pry its secrets loose. A memory slammed back. Another researcher gripped her arm and barked that contact with strangers was forbidden. Her heart lurched as she remembered the bombshell. After 30 years, a stranger had finally appeared. They plucked her from a sea of volunteers, the lone researcher assigned to this special mission. Marquis Cantus, her handler, unleashed a hush-hush investigation at the stranger's insistence. She swore she'd unmask the secrets behind the gifts while faithfully upholding the Marquis' agreement. A week ago, her investigation exploded to life the second she caught sight of something inside. She cracks the door, peeks in, and her eyes slam onto a pack of thugs already filling the room. The automatic door whooshed open, and realization slammed into her. This had to be a magical device. Inside, the men swarm the chef, roaring as they demand he teach them his recipe. Manager Yukito bows with a gentle smile and calmly reveals his ingredients hail from another world. Tessaria's gaze sharpens and her deduction lands. She's right. The friendly young man is the stranger. Rage exploded among the men as they fired accusations at Yukito, shouting he was trying to hog all the curry for himself. They close in, snarling he'll live to regret saying no. You could defy Lydia Beck as she bellows his title, manager. Nearby customers jerked back, gasps ripping through the crowd as a sudden savage clash exploded before them. In a blur, Lutia snatches a thug and hurls him out of the shop. Tessaria's cheeks burn crimson, completely captivated and awed by Lutius's thunderous display of power. Yukito and Lutia freeze in place, shock and dismay slamming across their faces. A mercenary rocketed out of the shop, hurled through the air with brutal force. Tessaria's gaze snaps to yet another thug lunging to snatch a steaming plate of curry. A cocky smirk splits the thief's face. He's sure he can clone the curry himself. Without warning, the Coriolis plate snaps out of existence, evaporating into thin air. Tessaria's jaw drops as magic hurls troublemakers into the street and vaporizes every scrap of food. Fists clenched, she vows to tear this mystery apart and expose the truth. Butterflies clawing at her stomach, Syria edges into the soba shop. Lutia erupts into a brilliant smile, wrapping her in a warm welcome as she guides her inside. She sweeps her arm in a grand, welcoming arc and beckons the elven researcher to claim any seat she likes. Tessaria's cheeks flamed as she drank in the sleek, unfamiliar menu. The interior slammed into her senses, pristine and spotless, nothing like the grimy taverns she's ever seen. Her eyes shot open as the menu's tiny details slammed into her like a punch. Her jaw drops as an avalanche of illustrated options crashes over her. She snaps an order for keike soba, the exact bowl the mercenaries had been hunting. A steaming, fragrant bowl of kakesoba settles before her, steam coiling and its aroma slamming into her like a warm punch. She steels herself and slurps the first tentative mouthful of the otherworldly noodles. Her face lit up into a perfect picture of delighted surprise. She devours each bite, utterly consumed by the incredible flavor. A lone tear slips down her cheek as she whispers, "It's delicious." This humble dish obliterates the capital's finest restaurants. Reality slammed into her. The food from this other world is absolutely mind-blowing. Her gift ignites. Perfect memory surges through her, searing every detail into place. A triumphant blaze ignites inside her as she declares in her head, "I've completely mastered kekesoba." She reveals that her gift is a startling anomaly among elves. It's not magic at all. Meet Tessaria, an intrepid researcher plunging into the heart of Ibaraki Forest. Her home? A vast woodland stretching across the eastern swath of the cathedral kingdom. Most elves retreated into secluded silence. Tessaria had always stood apart, daring to blaze a different path. As a youth, she peppered the traveling merchant with eager questions about every book he carried. He realized the world was bursting with every kind of person and an endless trove of gifts. The merchant's eyebrow shot up, and he declared she was strangely curious for an elf. She felt no need to stay. Lan, brimming with magic, pulled her in. Lantern flame danced as she devoured the page. She already knew her live stream. She vowed to dissect every gift, memorize its secrets, and lock each one into her flawless memory. Ambition ablaze, she burst from the forest to seize the hard-earned lessons of the real world. She became a dungeon explorer, plunging headfirst into shadowed, perilous caves. They unveiled her as a masterful elf. Her arrows struck true, and her short sword danced like lightning. The influential market Kana spotted her fire and vouched for her. Her eyes flared. This was her shot, and she snatched it without a second thought. Prove her worth, and a brand new path would burst wide open before her. During an expedition, a colossal serpent burst from the undergrowth and lunged at their party. The monster's brutal strike felled Marcus Cantus, leaving him gravely wounded. Panic seized the others. No mage could cure a poison this powerful. Tessaria shouted, "I have the exact antidote!" She dove in, cradled the fallen Marquis, and poured the life-saving potion with razor-steady hands. They'd pulled him from death's grip and stood at his bedside, watching him claw his way back to health. Gratitude slammed into Marquis Cantus. He swore he'd reward her in any way he could. She dropped her gaze, cheeks burning, and whispered that her true desire was to research gifts. They tapped her to helm a brand new research institute as its director. In her new office, she fired up her next stream to scrutinize a stranger's gift. She exploded into the room, screaming at her colleagues that something massive had just happened. A fellow researcher barreled in, breathless and shouting that a stranger had just appeared in Elville. Fire lit in Sarah's gut. Her chance had come again, and she knew it in her bones. Shift over, Yukito and Lucio burst into cheers, clinking bottles as they toast surviving a non-stop chaotic day. Yukito skidded to a halt, shock ripping across his face. He beams and declares the shop has leveled up, unlocking new menu items for them. A faint blush paints his cheeks as visions of daring new dishes spark to life in his head. The shot snaps to the castle battlements, their jagged stones slicing into the sky. The next morning, a beaming Tessaria bursts through the door, grinning ear to ear and ready to devour another meal. Lydia flashed a warm, dazzling greeting and thanked her, brimming with gratitude, for being a regular customer. Tessaria swoons, heart clattering, utterly undone by Lutius's smile as the shop's heady aroma wraps the moment in a warm haze. She's about to order when a brand new item explodes into view and seizes her gaze. Behold the dish, temporosoba. Her breath catches as she dives into the mysterious new dish, dissecting every odd ingredient like clues in a case. Ludi rockets toward the new item the instant her gaze locks on it. She proudly confirms that temporous soba has stormed onto their menu as the bold, brand new addition. Tessarius's face exploded into a grin as she couldn't contain herself and blurted out an order for the tempero soba. Lutia snaps the order at Yukito, and he beams before rocketing into action. The name tempero soba thundered through the elf's mind. She's practically bursting with excitement, her mind erupting into a storm of urgent questions. She snaps a quick gulp of water, desperate to steady her pounding heart. A secret grin flashes across her face as she fights to settle into a calm, scholarly mask. Her razor-sharp ears lock onto a strange clatter coming from the kitchen. A crisp, unmistakable sizzle jolts her, something's frying. Her face twisted as curiosity flared and eager anticipation crackled in her eyes. She rockets to her feet, faking an urgent need to leave. She snaps, "I'm just heading to the restroom." She plants herself in the doorway and snatches a look at Yukito cooking in the kitchen. Her eyes flare wide as she watches him pull off an unfamiliar cooking move. She steals a glance at the restroom sign, then melts into the shadows to keep watching. Her eyes snap open as she spots him plunging the ingredients into a huge, roaring pan of hot oil. She knows cooking oil is liquid gold. Every drop costs a small fortune. Commoners are reduced to slathering cheap, reeking animal lard. She gags at the memory of the Lord's choking, rancid stench. The shop's scent punches the air, proof every ingredient is from Earth. Her mind snaps to that banquet's greasy, foul-fried dish she ate once, each bite a slick assault that made her gag. She knows, without a doubt, Yukito's cooking will be irresistibly delicious. She slung herself into her seat, every nerve buzzing with hungry, giddy excitement for the meal. Lucio bursts in, clutching her order, a dazzling grin lighting up her face. She unveils the temporo soba, a magnificent dish that floods the air with an intoxicating fragrance. Saria bungles spectacularly and devours the entire meal laid out before her. She can't take her eyes off the majestic golden-brown tempura disc perched like a crown atop the noodles. She forces down a bolt of anticipation, her mouth already watering. She seizes her wooden chopsticks, every movement sharp with intent. She heaved the piece up and gaped. It's shockingly lighter than she expected. Her mind zeroes in. The main ingredient is sweet pecorosonians. Her eyes snap to the prawn's blazing red body. The locals call it an ebi. She pieces together the method. Coat it in batter, then plunge it into searing, roaring oil. She usually snatches the first spoonful to test the soup. Today she can't hold back and lunges for it. She tears off a massive bite, her face twisting into pure, bliss-drenched ecstasy. She chomps down on a huge, satisfying bite, her mouth brimming with that golden, fried delicacy. She swears the irresistible texture hits like a whole wheat cookie from another world. Her jaw drops. Pecoros onions are sweet, not the fiery bite she's used to. A tight close-up crashes in, laying bare a plump, juicy shrimp buried deep inside crackling golden batter. She beams like she found treasure, crowning the shrimp the perfect finishing touch while the oil stays feather-light. One sip of the dashi broth wipes her palate clean, jolting every taste bud awake for the next delicious bite. She snatched up the shichimi togarashi and flung a fiery dash into the mix, certain it would be the perfect match. A flavor explosion rips through her, and a flock of birds bursts into flight inside her. In the blink of an eye, the whole bowl is stripped clean. Satisfaction floods her. She knows the emotional punch of this meal is burned into her memory forever. A decadent, blush-inducing thought ignites in her mind, flushing her cheeks. A thrill hits her. She can't stop imagining the flavor explosion that would ignite if she piled this magnificent dish onto a steaming mound of curry rice. Imagining tempura soba colliding with curry rice detonates my taste buds. It's almost too much to handle. Her stomach's stuffed, yet an insatiable curiosity claws her forward, impossible to ignore. She bellows to Lutia, ordering another tempura soba nestled into a plate of curry rice. Lucia hurled the enormous order at Yukito, and he thundered back a hearty, cheerful confirmation. Tessaria beams. After a whole day of nothing but soba, she knows today's lunch will be legendary. She swears she'll be back at night, roaring that intellectual labor demands a full-on binge-eating session. The lunch rush explodes. Customers shout Lutia's name from every direction. From the kitchen, Yukito bellows, "Order up!" as finished plates streak into the bustling dining room. Lutia, flustered but razor-efficient, fires off another convoluted order to the manager. You grinned, accepted instantly, thrilled the shop was bursting with customers. Ludius beams, genuinely happy for the customers even as they teeter on the brink of collapse. She grits her teeth, thinking it's about time they called in reinforcements. A flashing text box spells out the gift's level-up system and drops beer straight into the rewards. You pressed your ear to his door and it hit you. His gift had skyrocketed. He explodes with stunned excitement when the next new menu item is revealed. Beer. A memory rips through him. The sweet Obashi branch he ran in his past life also poured beer. A few days earlier, he'd made it his first mission to dive headfirst into the town's drinking scene. He and Lutia slip into the local tavern after closing, combing its dim corners for clues as they push their investigation forward. A server strode up and planted a large, rustic wooden mug of the local ale on their table. Yukito tipped the mug to his lips, ready to finally quench the bone-deep thirst left by a long day. He downs a massive gulp while Lutia watches, a sly, knowing smile tugging at her lips. He jerks back in disgust, thinking the ale tastes utterly revolting. Lutia snaps, confirming his assessment. It's always lukewarm, sour, and choked with dregs. She sneers that alcohol here is primitive. Even the noble's wine is weak, unfinished swill. A decent lager exists, she says, but the Weinheim Empire has hoarded it and forged it into an ironclad monopoly. Yukito's jaw drops when he discovers this place has no distilled liquors, no whiskey or anything like it. Lutia drops the bomb. The dwarves' legendary fire wine? Nothing but ale laced with medicinal herbs. The truth slammed into him. This world's brewing tech was light years behind his own. A sudden flash hits. Lutia relishing a warm meal with her uncle back in Japan. She leans toward Yukito, longing burning in her voice, and admits she's always dreamed of trying beer someday. Yukito paces, realization slamming into him. He must hire a new employee before he can start selling beer. He realizes that stumbling upon anyone who could rival Lutia's skill would be a miracle. He resolves to hire a local and starts hunting for who could actually pull it off. He swore he'd ask Lutia for her suggestions tomorrow. The next day, a satisfied customer beams at Lucia and gushes thanks for the mouth-watering meal. Yukito barked out Lutia's name from the kitchen as the rush began to ebb. He snaps, "Take a breather. Things have calmed down." The clock on the wall glared down, already well past 1 o'clock. Yukito plants himself at the front, vowing he'll guard it so Lutia can devour her staff meal in peace. Lutia slips to the back, curiosity burning as she hunts for the manager's special original menu today. She gasped, cheeks burning and eyes wide at the magnificent feast Yukito had laid out. Dawn, a massive golden-brown kukager, explodes into view cradled in a huge bowl. She wipes sweat from her brow and bursts out, "That special dish looks mouth-wateringly delicious." She clasps her hands in a fierce thank you, then dives into her meal. She hoisted the bowl, lungs flooding with the heady, savory aroma of the fresh tempura. A tight close-up on the tempura blasts its just-fried crunch and flaky texture straight into your ears. With a sharp flick of her chopsticks, she snatches a massive piece of mixed tempura. Anticipation crackled across her face as she lifted the first bite to her lips. She sinks her teeth into it with a huge, satisfying bite, the crunch detonating through the panel. Lost in bliss, she savors the onion's rich perfume and plumps the shrimp into juicy, glistening perfection. An orchestra of onion-headed musicians erupts, their music slamming into her mouth as a thunderous symphony of flavor. She shuts her eyes, convinced this dish is pure, sumptuous luxury. Her eyes snap open in a flash. She knows the feast is far from over. She chomps into the cloud-like rice, eyes lighting up as its pillowy texture and whisper of sweetness hit her. The kakiage's savory punch floods the rice, fusing into every bite like a warm umami explosion. She beams, a bright smile, as she savors the perfect duet of crispy tempura and pillowy rice. Chopsticks snatch the perfect bite. Crispy tempura and pillowy rice collide in your mouth. A satisfying crunch roars, punctuating the exact moment she chooses. Realization slams into her. She snaps her eyes to the nearly empty bowl. She hoisted the bowl like a trophy. Stunned, she'd devoured every last bite. Her gaze snaps to the nearby pot of steaming dashi broth as a mischievous plan flares to life. A sly grin split her face as she plotted the perfect final bite to conquer the meal. Yukito reveals his old co-workers always drenched their leftover rice in steaming dashi. Lutia plucks a piece of tempura and sips the steaming, savory dashi-soaked rice tucked inside. The broth flares hot and she yelps, eyes snapping wide in shock. A tender, utterly satisfied smile unfurls, lighting up her flushed cheeks. She devours the last bites, eyes shining, and proclaims it the best meal she's ever tasted. The tempestuous oil unleashed a wave of rich umami that flooded the dashi, transforming the broth into pure savory gold. She hoists the bowl to her lips and drains the last warm mouthful of soup. Kakiage, rice, and dashi collided and fused into a perfect trinity of flavor. Amazement consumes her as three simple components snap into perfect harmony. Sated, she clasps her hands and exhales, her incredible meal finished. She can't believe she's tasting this divine food again in this world. Each bite pulls her deeper into a dream. She winces as memories strike. Bland rations and vile tavern grub that haunted her adventuring days. She clings to Yukito as her savior, his image blazing like a radiant light behind her eyes. Scrubbing the dishes, a memory slams into her. Yukito tasked her with finding a new employee. She racks her brain, hunting for someone who can whip up dishes and run the front. It slams into her. Most of the people she knows are fellow dungeon explorers. She admits, voice breaking, that she has no real ties left in the city. A memory erupts. Adventurers cook inside dungeons, but their techniques are crude and barely passable. It finally clicks for her. Being a master cook doesn't demand plunging into wild adventures. A flash of memory slams into her. The guild employee she once shared a meager meal with in the dungeon's shadowed belly. He gushed over her cooking, dropping that his family ran a diner. She blurts, "I remember, he was an amazing cook," as she scrambles to pull his name from memory. Chap, a young man with prosthetic legs, stands poised on a staircase. Nadita Sugisoba's title page bursts onto the screen. Chap burst back into his lodgings, and the elderly landlord met him with a beaming, grandfatherly grin and a warm clap on the shoulder. He plants his custom dwarf-made prosthetic legs like iron pillars and grins. They let him stride into a normal life. The old man stepped forward, warmth in his eyes, and declared to the young man, "Don't worry about rent for a while." A new chapter unfurls as Chap, the young man, steps into his humble lodgings. He shuts the door on his bare room. The echo screams he's alone. He sinks onto the bed and releases a heavy, ragged sigh, his advanced prosthetic legs exposed in full view. Panic claws at him. He must snatch a job fast and rebuild his savings from scratch. He slams his hand down and declares, "I'm Chap," a former guild porter, now unemployed. A flashback slams us back to the horrifying instant an arcane trap ripped both his legs away. He once cut his teeth in the guild's elite investigation division, a squad staffed by battle-hardened former adventurers. This elite unit was forged from top explorers, knight commanders, and mercenaries. They plucked Chap into the elite ranks. His game-changing gift was exactly what they needed. His item box gift could swallow endless loot, a prized dungeon-delving ability. Every run could kill him, but the pay, wildly unreliable, still paid out jaw-dropping sums. Gratitude exploded when the hefty wages hit his account. Each coin a step toward the dream he was scrimping to fund. As the eldest son, he carried his family's tiny, always packed diner like a torch through the quiet streets of their rural town. He plants himself beside his younger brother, sparks of family drama poised to ignite. A tight close-up snaps to his grandfather, stern jaw, iron gaze, respected by everyone, a master of his craft. Crowds stormed the family diner, every seat filled because their cooking was a one-of-a-kind gift. His father's gift forged him into a lightning-fast cook. His grandfather could conjure any seasoning from a single pinch of salt. But Spite the eldest stood apart, cut from a colder cloth. Their family's culinary gift landed squarely on his younger brother, crowning him the heir to their lineage. Against the odds, Chap's love for cooking blazed. He dove into the family kitchen and helped with eager hands. He radiated fierce confidence in his cooking. No special gift, just honed skill. They watched him bust his gut and burn with passion, convinced the diner would be his. At 15, he tore himself away from home, making the gut-wrenching choice to leave everything behind. His family anointed his gifted brother the shop's heir and left him clutching a single cold note. He tore himself away from their kindness and let his fierce love of cooking propel him into independence. A new mission ignited. He would scrimp and save every penny until he could throw open the doors of his very own restaurant. He kicked off his journey, charging straight for Elveo, the largest city nearby. He stormed straight into the Dungeon Explorers Guild, hunting for work. News of his item box gift exploded, and employers snapped him up as a porter. He plunged into battle against monstrous beasts. Death waited at every turn, but the payoff was fat. He hoarded every paycheck, ready to quit the moment his savings could bankroll his own restaurant. He lived for his work, exploding with joy every time he cooked for his adventuring party. His comrades clustered around the campfire, showering him with warm thanks as they dug into the steaming stew he'd made. They raved over his cooking, hailing it as a lucky miracle to sink their teeth into such mouth-watering food down in a dungeon. Chap flushed, grinning ear to ear as their sincere compliments flooded them with joy. He could turn scraps into feasts. His companions called him a culinary miracle. He traces his scars, a bitter sorrow coiling in his gut as he admits his battered body can't brave dangerous dungeons anymore. The money for his dream is gone, and he knows he must sprint to land a new job. A stranger's voice thunders in his head. "Money runs the world. You can always earn more." With steel in his gaze, he roared that he hadn't given up on his dream. Lying in bed, he stares at the ceiling, wrestling with whether to throw himself at the merchant guild in search of work. Maybe he can hustle into a cook's job, even if it's only grinding through the prep line in the back. A sudden, thunderous knock on the door ripped him out of his thoughts. His landlady's voice barks down the hall. "You've got a customer!" Confusion slammed into Chap, and he jerked back, pulse hammering. Who could possibly be visiting him? He yanks the door open. Lucius Ellen fills the doorway, smiling warmly at him. He gaped, utterly flabbergasted, cheeks blazing crimson as his tongue tripped and he stammered her name. Lucia bursts in with a sunny greeting, while the young man stands dumbstruck, words snagged in his throat. He gapes, breath stolen, as legendary Lutia stands right in front of him. His breath caught. She'd actually stepped into his humble mess-strewn bachelor pad. Dread slammed into him, panic gnawing at his throat at the thought of her being in that place. He sizes her up as highborn, a noblewoman whose presence demands respect. She wields the legendary sword King Gift. A flashback explodes to life, revealing her as a fearsome warrior, a master of the blade whose strikes left no room for doubt. Her reputation as a fearsome swordswoman thundered from Alvale all the way to the capital. He'd shown up to her parties a few times, rooted to the edge of the room by nerves, his voice strangled, too intimidated to speak. For a heartbeat, he imagines she came out of concern for his legs, then he snaps the thought away. Lutia edges closer, calls his name, and his gaze snaps to her. She reveals that other explorers told her about the accident that cost him his legs. She blurted, "Are you okay?" And he answered with a half smile. Magic had healed his wounds, and prosthetics now replaced what he'd lost. He lets out an awkward laugh and confesses the pricey new legs drained his wallet dry. He blurted a joke that died on impact, plunging the room into a suffocating, awkward silence. He freezes as fluster hits him like a wave, words dying on his tongue before the famous warrior. Lucia locks eyes with him, a soft, knowing warmth glowing in her gaze. She bursts through the door, breathless, and apologizes for crashing in without warning. Blood rushes to his face as the mortified Chap insists her visit is an honor. They stumble through a slightly awkward but polite exchange. Ludius's expression snapped to steel as she braced to cut straight to the reason she'd come. She drops the bomb. The guild axed him. He's been laid off and his days as an investigator are done. She asks about his legs. He grins and shoots back that they're fine for daily life, just hopeless in a dungeon. He flashes a grin and declares it's not all bad. No more worrying about athlete's foot. Ludius's grin screamed he'd storm into dungeons barefoot. Time and again. Her laugh explodes, painting his cheeks crimson as embarrassment seizes him. He rakes his fingers through his hair, forcing his racing heart to steady as he stands before the famous adventurer. Lutia zeroes in, grilling him. "Have you found a new job yet?" His gaze slams down and he blurts, "I haven't." Relief explodes across Lydia's face. She's ecstatic she made it in time. Confusion snapped across Chap's face as he demanded, "What do you mean by in time?" She clamps her hands on his shoulders, her electric energy jolting a surprised blush across his face. Hope flared across her face as she cried his name. She leans in, eyes blazing, and presses, "Is it true you want to become a chef and open your own shop one day?" She beams, replaying how he taught her to cook in a dungeon and raves about his mouth-watering food. He can still hear himself vow to train at a proper restaurant. Spotting her opening, Lutia seizes the moment and drops a bold, sweeping proposal that stops the room. She beamed a bright, hopeful smile and beckoned him to come work at her shop. Confusion ripped through him and he barked, "What shop are you talking about?" She announces, pride blazing, that she works at Nadi Suja Soba, the best diner in the old capital. Chap's sure. To train properly, he must throw himself into a kitchen ruled by true master chefs. Lutia swears it. One taste of their soba, and he'll know she's not lying. The next morning, she flings open the doors and unveils the magnificent Nadai Sujisoba shop to him, pride blazing in her eyes. Chap freezes, words ripped from his throat, while Lutia beams, trembling with excitement as she explains how eager she is for him to taste the food. He stares, mesmerized by the crystal-clear glass doors, his mind racing to guess what price a treasure like that would command. He's convinced the intricate food models in the window were crafted by a master craftsman. Awestruck, he drank in the opulent construction, sure it was fit for a royal visit. He asked Lutia if Nadia Tsugasoba truly counts as a first-class, high-end restaurant. Lutia laughs, scoffing that it's a diner for common folk. The cheapest soba costs only 340 kohl. Chap's jaw drops as he roars that something this good shouldn't cost so little. Lutia yanks him inside, grinning as she promises a rush of unknown flavors that'll ignite his senses. She yanks the chapter, still reeling, through the automatic doors and into the mysterious shop. Chap gapes, shouting that the door keeps swinging open and crashing shut by itself. It hits him. Even the swankiest restaurants he knows can't match this kind of magic. He can't believe he ever crowned that fancy place top tier when his family's simple diner outshines it. Determination blazing in his eyes, Chap plants his feet at the threshold of the amazing sober shop. He shut his eyes tight and drank in the exotic, intoxicating scent pouring out from within. A mouth-watering aroma slams into him. He dissects it like a pro. It's neither meat nor vegetable. He deduced it came from seafood, eyes lighting up as he inhaled the delicate, mouth-watering aroma. Doubt shattered. He's now absolutely sure the chef running this place is a true master. Yukito sweeps in with a warm grin, greets everyone like an old friend, and proudly announces he's the manager. Chap's cheeks ignite crimson as that impossibly polished, razor-sharp greeting slams into him, leaving him utterly stunned. His flawless etiquette had the chap swearing he must have been drilled in the royal palace kitchens. He chokes on his name, stammering as his cheeks flare red beneath Yukito's friendly gaze. Yukito beams, then casually drops that he'd been thinking of bringing a new recruit on board. Lutia burst in with a bright laugh, proclaiming that Chap is indeed a masterful cook. She charges the job pitch with electric enthusiasm, crowning their delicious soba as the perfect training perk. Panic exploded in Chap as he lunged at Lutia, shouting he'd never said anything so presumptuous. He scrambles to refute her sky-high claims, crimson-faced and utterly flustered before the manager. Yukito, calm as a still lake, urges Chaps to taste the soba first, then decide whether to work there. He sweeps his arm toward a chair and beckons the still flustered Chap to sit instead of standing in the doorway. Yukito flashes a brilliant smile, slides a menu across the table, and urges him to order whatever he likes. Chap grabbed the menu, his jaw dropping at the flawless quality and meticulous craftsmanship. He drops into the chair, zeroes in on the options, then flashes Lutia a gentle smile and asks for a glass of water. He gaped at the strange spread, every plate an alien puzzle. Only a lone Savoy cabbage on one snapped into focus. Yukito flashes a grin and eagerly recommends the new Hiyashi Kitsune Soba whenever he can't decide. Chap zeroes in on this menu photo, eyes locking on the huge brown triangular topping, wondering what it could be. With summer on the horizon, cold soba slams into your life like an icy, irresistible delight. Chap seizes the moment, throws caution to the wind, and formally orders the recommended dish. He bristles with nervous excitement, butterflies and adrenaline surging as he steps into this brand new culinary adventure. He's convinced a single bite will forge him into a sharper, stronger chef. A grin rips across his face the instant he hears his meals on the way. The Hayashi Kitsune soba arrived like a trophy, impeccably arranged and radiating an irresistible scent that dared anyone not to taste it. Chaplin's in, awe blazing in his eyes as he scrutinizes the mysterious meal. His jaw snaps open as Lutia suddenly drops into the seat at his table, bowl in hand. She beams, declaring she hasn't had breakfast yet and will join him. With a cheerful itadakimasu, we swing as Lutia bows in thanks and readies herself to dive into the meal. Chap locks eyes with her for a beat, then snatches up his chopsticks and dives in. Lutia slurps her noodles, bliss exploding across her face. The camera slams into a close-up of her blissful smile as she savors that delicious, familiar taste. Chap locks onto that look, the rapt, bliss-soaked grin of someone savoring a bite of pure heaven. He steels himself, jaw set, and faces the meal like a master chef. Laser-focused, every motion reverent, he leans in and dissects the bowl. Ashen noodles tangled in midnight broth, crowned by two sharp triangular toppings. Trained in the kitchen, he still stands baffled and confesses he can't identify a single ingredient. A fierce blush steals his resolve. He realizes this food is testing him. He clamps the unfamiliar chopsticks in his fingers, heart pounding as he steels himself for the first bite. A jolt of clarity hits him. This soba couldn't be local. It came from a land whose food culture was utterly alien. He dives straight into the heart of the dish, the noodles, and tastes them first. He flails with the chopsticks, so I lunge to seize the slick noodles before they slip away. Triumph surged through him as he hoisted a tiny, glistening morsel up to his lips. Razor-precise noodles gleam like they're studded with jewels, snagging every shard of light. He plunges in on his first bite, slurping the chilled noodles straight into his mouth. A punchy action line snaps, amplifying the quick, satisfying slurp. His eye rockets open as a lightning strike of flavor rips through him. The complex aroma hits his tongue, and a serene, bloom-draped coastline explodes to life in his mind. A flash flings him into a sunlit, rolling meadow, and he erupts. So clean, so delicious! He staggers, breath stolen. This dish shatters every flavor he ever knew. This dish blows the spaghetti he knows out of the water. It's from a whole other world. His mind snaps to those other dishes, soulless filler slammed together just to stuff a hungry belly. Some are purposefully cured into rock-hard, salt-crusted relics just to preserve them. Others gamble it all on the raw excellence of their expensive ingredients. This dish sets every ingredient ablaze with flavor, pure first-class craftsmanship. It hits him. Ludius wasn't raving for nothing. This place ranks among the kingdom's top 5 restaurants. He plants his flag and vows to work here. First, he must finish dissecting the Hashi Kitsune soba. He zeroes in on the mysterious fried tofu topping, his gaze razor-sharp and every nerve tuned to it. He hoists the piece and watches savory broth gush out in an endless, hungry stream. He stares as oil gleams across it, yet not a single grill mark scars its surface. He sinks his teeth in. His eye shoots wide as a detonating burst of flavor rocks his tongue. A roaring waterfall of deliciousness crashed over him, drowning him in wave after wave of mouth-watering flavor. "What is this?" he gaped, completely dumbfounded as the taste exploded across his tongue. Sweet and savory waves crash across his tongue, cascading down like a roaring waterfall. He's never tasted anything like it. One bite shatters his idea of delicious and rewrites everything he thought he knew about flavor. He pits it against the refined, delicate dishes of the high-class cuisine he knows. The flavor slams into your mouth, bold, in your face, and undeniably delicious. He swallows, and a profound, thunderous flavor buries itself in his senses. He bellowed, "Delicious!" and demanded of Lydia, "What is this incredible thing?" Ludius grins, explaining the Abura age is irresistible. It's soaked up the broth and explodes with flavor. Chap echoes the strange name, "OJ-san?" and a tiny cartoon Xerenia pops onto his head. He reels. "It's made from beans?" Even Lutia throws up her hands and admits she has no idea how. Lutia shoots a question through the kitchen pass-through. "Does the manager know the process?" Chapper swaggered in, flaunting the bizarre dish, the one-of-a-kind shop, and the jaw-dropping chef who made it all. He curls his hand into a steel-hard fist above his bowl, vowing to absorb every scrap of knowledge this place can offer. He stands deep in bows now, having begged to be hired at Nadid Suja Soba. Yukito and Lutia slammed into a bone-crushing handshake with him, grins wide. They'd just landed a steadfast new ally. 5 days later, he planted himself at the soba shop's entrance, confidence crackling as he beamed and beckoned customers inside. He and Lutia moved in perfect sync, slamming out plates and steering a packed restaurant through the chaos of the lunch rush. He roared a massive order, 3 cake soba with curry sets. He hurls another convoluted order to Lutia across the kitchen pass, urgency slicing through the clatter. You could have stood there beaming as you watched him and realized just how indispensable his help had been. Chap slices through the work with razor precision, every deft action honed by years in his family's diner. Yukito practically glows with gratitude. Chap has slid into the shop's otherworldly groove like it was always meant to be. In the hush, a lone thought bubble erupts. And then, Chap's voice trembles with resolve as he vows to become a chef and implores Yukito to train him. He admits tasting sobriety slammed into him like a thunderbolt, and he's still got a mountain to climb. He vows, eyes blazing, that one day he'll craft those exact innovative mouth-watering dishes with his own hands. Doubt claws at Yukito. Are the chain restaurant's methods enough? The chap's earnest, passionate plea rips straight through him and moves him to his core. A flashback slams him into training. He's transfixed as his mentor wrangles the noodles like a maestro. He cringes, reliving the time he boiled the soba into a limp, soggy mess. His mentor clapped him on the back and vowed boiling soba was a brutal art. Hard to tame, but he'd master it. Pass this wisdom to Chappie. Tell him his instincts are spot on, and with practice he'll learn. Chap's face blazed with hope and iron determination as he fired a heartfelt yes. In the kitchen, a chap locked eyes with manager Yukito and fired a blunt question his way. He's desperate to unmask the secret behind their mouth-watering dashi broth. They plunge kombu kelp into the pot and shave katsuobushi into a smoky, savory rain. He snaps, "Katsuobushi is smoked, dried bonito fish. Don't sleep on vegetables and bones. They pack explosive, mouth-watering flavor." Chap scribbles furiously, each note proving the lesson pure gold. He admits he still hasn't nailed down a theme for his own restaurant. He swears he'll take everything he learns here and build his own shop from it. A lump rose in Yukito's throat as he begged Chap with a single, pleading look to carry on the sober tradition. A fierce surge of determination rips through Yukito. He steels himself to be the teacher who won't let anyone down. He clutches the noodle strainer like a battle blade, every muscle coiled to unleash everything he's got. The wall clock glares, it's just slipped past 4 p.m. The lunch rush finally ends and the staff exhale, sinking into a hard-earned break. Chap spots the evening crowd closing in, but Lutia smirks. Lunch is always packed. Chap dropped the name of the swanky, reservation-only restaurant in the Noble District. Lutia's eyes blaze as she drops the name of the beloved, time-worn diner on Main Street. They both burst out, "Suja Soba is the busiest place around!" Lutia nudges him with a wicked grin and jabs, "Getting tired of this non-stop grind yet?" Chap smiles, snapped no, and insisted that rewarding work is the best. He flashes back to his adventuring days, when dragging himself through another sunrise felt like a hard-won victory. Now purpose surges through him. He feels truly alive. Gratitude surges through him as Yukito and Lucia teach him with unwavering patience. He still wrestles with the kitchen's bizarre enchanted tools, every chop and stir a fresh battle. Yukito, ever the kind mentor, jumps in and demonstrates it again without missing a beat. Chap's cheeks flamed and his heart leapt. He thought this was the perfect place to work. Lydia snaps, "Take your break, I'll watch the front." He barrels to the back and a bolt of memory strikes. It's staff mealtime. You nod and accept his confirmation. His requested meal is now ready. On a trace, a magnificent bowl of wakame soba gleamed. Chap gapes at the dish as realization crashes over him. He's never eaten it before. He knows it in his bones. This meal is a cornerstone of his culinary training. He sinks into his seat, eyes alight, ready to dissect every subtle note and savor each flavor. Boom! KK soba explodes onto the table, piled high with a generous helping of guacamole. He reels at the thought that many cultures just fling this seaweed aside. He sank his teeth in. It gave a pillow-soft yield, then tugged with an oddly addictive chew. The mouthfeel hits like a surprise attack, flooding your senses with a rush of pure, delicious satisfaction. His jaw drops as a long, overlooked ingredient explodes with mouth-watering flavor. That unique, crackling crunch crashes into the savory soba broth, making every bite sing. The sea's rich aroma crashes into him, flooding every sense with a rush of breathtaking wonder. It slams into him like a tidal wave. The kombu, wakame, and bonito are all from the sea. Their natural affinity forges a perfect, harmonious flavor. Lutia's advice flashing in his mind, he slurps the noodles loud and unapologetic. It hits him. Slurping unlocks the aroma and magnifies every flavor. He lands on one brutal truth. The whole experience only works with soba noodles. He devoured the last mouthful, cheeks flaming as the manager's cooking hit him, shockingly, overwhelmingly good. The noodles vanished, but the real feast is just getting started. A raw, determined grunt rips free as he launches himself to his feet. He strode to the sleek, high-tech rice cooker perched on the counter. A soft pop snaps the silence as he lifts the lid. A colossal, perfume-scented cloud of scalding steam surges outward. He plunges his spoon into the perfectly cooked rice, eyes glued to its glossy sheen. He unleashes the second act of his meal, a steaming bowl of rice paired with tangy, crunchy pickles. The rice snaps with a firm bite and spills a hushed, grain-like sweetness. That simple flavor sparks jaw-dropping versatility. It's a flawless canvas, cradling steaming soups and letting bold, savory sides steal the show. Today, he dares to savor it without his usual curry. He sinks a massive bite and closes his eyes as the rice's pure flavor floods his mouth. He unleashes a fiery sprinkle of sashimi into his leftover soba broth. He ladles the steaming seasoned broth over his rice and devours it with a triumphant grin. A rosy blaze of satisfaction erupts across his face as a low, contented sigh escapes him. He held the empty plate, beaming as he savored how delicious it was. He marvels that feasting like this is a rare perk reserved for employees. A satisfied sigh escapes him as he stacks the dishes and murmurs, "That was so good." He remembers scraping by, pinching pennies and rationing every meal. Lutia peeks and freezes, eyes snapping wide. He's stunned to discover he's already finished eating. She snaps, "It's my turn for a break, now." Blast Chap with a cheerful reminder, wakame is unlimited for staff meals. Chappa had just been Dana, belly full and fired up for the evening rush. A simple panel slams us into the next scene. He knots his bandana tight, eyes blazing, and roars, "It's time to work." In the dining hall, he spots two castle servants trading worldly whispers. He catches their whispered words. The Grand Duke is burning with worry for Marsima. Focus slams onto majestic Alvale Castle, its towers rising like spears against a cold gray sky. Inside a lavish bedroom, a maid beseeches the child to eat, desperation coiling through every word. An untouched piece of bread waits, nestled in a savory dish atop the tray. In the massive bed, a fox-eared, tailed child flat out refused. The caption slams their names across the screen: Marswell Cannon, Al Vale, Heisen's Ward. She stands frozen, helpless, worry carving deep lines across her face. Tears carve rivers down Mars' face as they choke out, "Why am I alone?" They press their face into the pillow, sobs ripping from them as they cry for their parents. A flashback explodes, hurling us straight into Mars's homeland, a battered border territory. Their mother shone as a beautiful kid, soon morphing into a fox-like beast. Mars, a half-breed, inherited their mother's lovely ears, silken crescents that instantly set them apart. Their parents' love blazed, their marriage radiated happiness. Mars's memory crashes in. He's a smiling child, beloved by everyone. They remember lunging for their parents, frantic hands outstretched as they screamed their names. Their parents surged forward, hugging them fiercely and shouting they loved Mars dearly. The happy memory shatters, two white ears snap into view. The somber butler stepped forward, cradling the urns like fragile secrets, and set them down before the small, confused child. Mars jerks his head skyward and snaps, "What are those objects?" The butler drops a bomb. They're the remains of Mars' parents. A raging storm ripped their carriage off the road and hurled it crashing into the ravine. Abandoned, Mars crumpled into sobs, clutching the doll like a lifeline. Grief carved itself across the child's face, a raw, gut-wrenching portrait. Markiel Vel loomed before them, towering like a living mountain. He kneels, meets the child's eyes, and corrects them with a warm laugh. "I'm your grand-uncle." Mars repeats the title, the words slipping out as a fragile, barely audible whisper. Alvale thrusts his hand forward, voice steady and fierce, inviting Mars to join his family. Mars seizes his hand and thrusts him into a lonely new life within the castle's cold walls. The final image hits like a punch to the gut, a heartbreaking memory of their parents, gone forever. Thrown into the alien sprawl of Alvale, young Mars staggers through unfamiliar streets, utterly lost and burning with loneliness. The child found themselves encircled by strangers, every face among the castle staff utterly unfamiliar. Even the food felt alien, and Mars recoiled, refusing to eat once again. The meal is bland, the child wails, aching for the familiar spices of home. The grave news struck like thunder. His heart sank and he let out a slow, knowing sigh. Stormed into Markiel Vale's presence and blurted out that Mars still hadn't eaten. Avel trembles, terrified the child will fade into nothing as they journey to join their lost parents. Desperate for a solution, the worried Marquis trembled. Then a sudden, otherworldly idea slammed into its mind. Yukito explodes into action, fiercely protecting his secret curry as eager customers surge toward him. His staff insist this keeps happening. No one can resist the curry. Yukito bellowed that his curry was a one-of-a-kind treasure, forged to pull a child back from the brink. A new chapter explodes onto the scene, serving up cozy comfort, mouth-watering flavor, and gentle healing. A riot of color engulfs Mars as memories of their parents' loving smiles surge back. The child clings to memories of a kind human father and a radiant kitsune mother. Together they freeze before a vibrant feast, every color and scent striking them like a bitter echo of happier days. Their mother cradled a spoonful of food toward them, her smile warm and inviting. Mars chomped, and the flavor slammed into him like a perfect, comforting memory. Their father sweeps them into a tight embrace, eyes shining, and asks if the delicious meal delighted them. Mars beams like sunrise and proclaims the food is absolutely wonderful. Grinning ear to ear, the child thrusts a tiny hand toward their beloved mother and pleads for one more bite. The dream shatters. Mars snaps awake, a raw gasp tearing out as he reaches for nothing. The heartbreaking truth slams into them, and tears spring to their eyes. They claw at the sheets as the crushing truth hits. Their parents are gone, never to return. A hollow ache gnaws at their chest, driving them to drop everything and run to their family. A dangerous thought ignites. What if refusing to eat will bring them back together? Markiel 5 storms into the room and freezes at the sight of the listless child, eyelids heavy yet stubbornly awake. Mars lifts their hollow eyes and, like clockwork each week, fires a lone, resigned nod at their great-uncle. The child's fragile state wrenched the powerful Marquis's heart. He steels his resolve, heart sharpening into a blade as he vows to find any way to save them. Perched at the bedside, he whispers a gentle, "Good morning, Mars." The child croaks a hollow, half-hearted reply, their spirit still shattered. He recalls the servant's warning slamming into him. Mars's ailment isn't a wound of the body. A sickness gnaws at the heart, a bone-deep melancholy that sinks its teeth in. A sickness has seized his heart. No medicine can cure it. Markiel Five steps forward, voice tight, apologizing for vanishing. He's been slammed with relentless work in the capital. He gently cradles the child from the bed, lifts them into his arms, and offers to carry them out for a walk. They stride across the castle grounds, a tiny, listless child cradled limp in his powerful arms. Alvel sweeps the frail child into his arms and presses them to his chest, silent worry blazing in his eyes. He gaped as the child felt impossibly light, a cruel sign the illness was hollowing them out. He remembers when Mars was strong enough to stride while clutching his hand. Now the child is a whisper of strength, and he must haul them on his back wherever they go. Mars has shut himself off, flinging away anyone who reaches out to comfort him. Desperation clawed at him as he cried out, "Is there anyone in this world who can possibly heal this child's heart?" The child bolts upright and jabs a finger into the air, a fierce burst of energy fueling the motion. Alvarez went rigid as Mars shattered days of silence, his single question slicing the air. The child's finger jabbed at the strange little shop wedged into the castle wall. Alvale thrusts a finger at the building and declares, "That's Nade Tsujusoba, a diner." He jabbed a finger at its weird spot, wedged right into the castle's outer wall. The diagram reveals how the shop throws open its doors to both the bustling public and the secluded private garden. A memory slammed into him. The owner sprawled in the garden, and he cracked up. Mars leaned in, probed about the shop, and Alvil nodded. "It's Yukito Hatsushiro's." He declares, voice booming, that this shop sprang to life from a stranger's gift. His attendants froze, aghast that he dare share such a vital state secret. Mars butchered the word stranger into a mouth-watering sounding mess and blurted, "Is that something tasty?" Elvale's eyes lit with curiosity. He grinned and beckoned them over to take a closer look. The child nods once, agreeing, and a sudden spark ignites in their eyes as life roars back. With hope burning, Avale hoists Mars and charges toward the otherworldly restaurant. Flustered attendants sprint, desperate to catch their determined lord. He throws open the shop with a triumphant grin and asks the child, So, what do you think? He gapes. Even at this early hour, the shop is already swarming with customers. A mouth-watering aroma floods the air, and the child's sensitive nose twitches. The scent slams into him, ripping open a vivid memory of a joyous feast from better days. The scent crashed over them. Home incarnate, the very meals their loving mother once cooked. Bell's eyes snapped wide as a jaw-dropping revelation slammed home. A powerful, familiar scent slams into him. Curry rice, unmistakable. That very evening he barreled back with Mars at his side, dead set on testing whether this food could help. Alvail swept the small child into his arms as the child whispered, "The curry smells delicious." Mars's grin explodes as the beloved scent of home crashes over them, bliss blooming across their face. A lightning-quick, bone-deep understanding slammed across Marquis Alvail's face. Mars's homeland brimmed with spices, and the beast's blood burned for flavor. The child shoved food aside, not from mere grief, but because something deeper held them. It hit him. The bland northern fare would never thrill the child's taste buds. Alfeel throws up his hands, owns up to his carelessness, then grins and proclaims a brilliant new idea. He declares, "Let's hit the sober shop for lunch and demolish some curry." Mars's gaze snaps up, hope flaring in his eyes, and he whispers his agreement. A warm memory hits, our family beaming as we dig into steaming bowls of curry. The table erupted in a riot of vibrant, mouth-watering dishes from their homeland. They spurned the castle's plain, salty fare. Clutching the child, Elville's hope blazed. Maybe this place would finally awaken their appetite. The automatic door whooshes open, an earth-made marvel that leaves Mars staring in stunned fascination. Inside, Mars sucked in a long, hungry breath, drinking in that comforting, delicious sensation. Curry slams into the kid's nose, then a rich, ocean-fresh fish scent crashes in and makes his mouth water. A single scent ripped them back to a cherished moment, eating grilled fish with their family, steam curling and laughter ringing. Yukito, the shop's manager, beamed and greeted them with a warm, friendly welcome that put them instantly at ease. Lutia bows with sharp, formal poise to the Grand Duke while Yukito goes beet red, stammering and flailing in comic embarrassment. Alvail bows low, apology tumbling from his lips, and Elf Tessaria just smiles, brushing it off. "Your visit is no trouble." Tessaria nods sharply and promises to deliver his greetings to manager Yukito. Mars curled into Alvail's embrace and pointed, curiosity blazing at the elven researcher. Tessaria flashes a grin and vows to give Mars a mouth-watering feast crafted by the talented manager. Crimson floods the small child's cheeks as he ducks his gaze and offers a soft, shy nod of agreement. Tessaria's hand darts out and lands a tender, reassuring pat on Mars's head. The touch explodes into a memory, their mother's loving hand, warm and gentle, cupping their cheek in quiet praise. Mars shuts their eyes as a tender gesture floods them with a profound warmth. Lutia presses for the child's story, and Elvail's voice breaks as they reveal the family's devastating tragedy. The news hits. Lutia's face crumples as empathy floods her eyes, sorrow etched into every line. The Grand Duke lowers his gaze and confesses the situation is ripping him apart. Lydia brightens, swept them to a table with practiced grace, sliding a glass of water into their hands. Tessaria bursts in with the meal, marshalling the esteemed guests to their seats. Avail winces and blurts, "Is it too spicy?" And Mars replies with a soft, steady reassurance. A beaming server glides in with a tray of water, each glass cooled by ice that feels like an impossible luxury. Young Mars' eyes shoot wide as he stares, jaw barely holding, at a glass crammed with glittering ice. The child swore the cup glittering in the water had tumbled straight out of a magical shop. Tessaria snatched up their order as Alvail urgently asked for smaller portions for the child. With a warm, decisive smile, she cuts Mars's meal down to half its normal size. Tessaria snapped the revised order to the kitchen, bowing with a radiant smile. Yukito bellows from behind the counter, his booming shout confirming the order. Alvail caught sight of a new face hustling in the kitchen, curiosity burning at how quickly the shop was growing. Chap, the new hire, peered out and froze when he locked eyes on the important guests at the table. You flash a confident smile, vowing to whip up a truly delicious meal. Alvail leans close and gently coaxes Mars to open their mouth for a drink of water. He steadied the small child, lifted the magnificent glass, and watched a tiny mouth steal a single, triumphant sip. A delighted shiver bolts through Mars as cold water kisses their tongue. Mars's cheeks burst into a happy blush as they murmured, This water is delicious. I clamp down my grin at that sudden spark of life, playing it cool as if they crave more. Mars lunges forward, shouting for more water, another heap of curry, and that rich, savory soup. Lutia bursts in, vowing to deliver a hearty, soul-satisfying feast. Tessaria and Chat stride forward, brandishing steaming trays of curry rice sets as fragrant steam spirals into the air. A perfectly portioned mini-set slammed down before the small, foxy-aired child. On the tray, a tiny bowl of cake soba perches, half submerged in a steaming plate of curry. Mars's eyes lock on the meal, awe swelling in his chest as he whispers, "This is amazing." The child zeroes in on the familiar brown soup buried in the thick brown sauce. Mars inhaled sharply, the warm, nostalgic scent crashing into his chest and settling like an old friend. Warmth crashes over them as they remember their mother pressing a steaming, similarly scented bowl to their lips. Alvil whispers, grin widening. Mars is already savoring the food. Mars snaps their gaze up at him, voice shuddering with raw emotion as they speak his title. Alvel bursts in, laying out the two dishes, curry rice and the quirky cake soba. He shoved the curry forward with a grin and asked, "Which one are we trying first?" "Curry's my pick." He steadies his hand and, with surgical precision, scoops a flawless, steaming bite of curry and rice onto the spoon. Alvel leans in, eyes soft as a promise, and coaxes Mars to open their mouth and sink their teeth into the offered morsel. Mars snatches the first taste, and the flavor detonates inside him, instantly familiar and utterly overwhelming. A vivid vision of their smiling mother bursts into view, holding a spoonful out to them. Their happiest memory overflows with their parents' tender, loving words. Mars's heart surges with the memory, laughter booming as steaming plates moved between eager hands, each bite a shared joy with the family they adored. A bittersweet memory slams into the child, crumpling his face with sorrow. Tears carve hot tracks down their cheeks as they wail, calling for their mother and father. Alarm shoots through Alvale and he blurts, "Was the curry too spicy?" Mars chokes on a sob, declaring, "It's delicious and it tastes exactly like home." The child aches to share this incredible meal with their parents. They still hear their parents gushing, "This food tastes like heaven." Mars wails burns to sit and break bread with their lost family right now. Avel watches the grieving child, his heart a crushing weight. Wasaro. Mars craves a meal with their great-uncle, mother, and father, everyone together at the table. They grin like conspirators, knowing this mouth-watering feast is theirs alone. Not a single bite will reach their parents. Truth slams into them. Their parents are gone, and now every meal is theirs to face alone. Elvale crushed the child to his chest, painfully aware they couldn't yet fathom the finality of death. He drops to his knees, voice breaking, and whispers that their parents climbed into the sky and will never come back. Mars sobbed, body heaving as the brutal reality of their loss finally crashed over them. Elvale clutched their small hands tightly, pouring every scrap of comfort he could muster into the squeeze. He snaps at Mars, voice razor sharp, "Don't forget, we still have people left to eat." Mars snaps their head up and asks, voice tight, if their great-uncle will be with them. Alvela locks eyes with them, determination blazing, and vows he'll always be by their side. He vows that as they grow, they'll meet countless new faces to break bread with. He conjures a future where friends squeeze around a dinner table, laughter bubbling up and filling the night. He leans in and vows that when they're grown, they'll be swept into love and walk down the aisle. They'll break bread for a lifetime, plate after plate, beside the person they choose to wed. The moment they welcome their own children, their family bursts into new life and grows larger. This new family will crowd the table, laugh through shared meals, and forge unforgettable memories. And years from now, those kids will explode into adulthood and forge families of their own. Their spouses and grandchildren also surge into the ever-growing family table. Mars shrinks into a whisper, innocent and raw. "What's a family?" They don't know where they belong. Doubt claws at them. Can they really pull off all those things when they're older? The child drifts alone, loneliness clawing at their chest as a future too vast to grasp unfurls before them. They press their hands to their chest and whisper, "Will this crushing loneliness ever truly let go?" Alvale plants their feet and swears with iron resolve to defend Mars until they become an adult. He shouts that their parents watch from the sky, pleading with them to stay alive. Mars snaps, "Are my mother and father part of the crowd watching us?" Elville proves it. No one wants their happiness more than their parents. He implores Mars not to even think about joining their parents in death so soon. He bellows that to live is to eat. No creature can survive without food. Eating tears life from food and forges it into your own, sustaining you. Mars locks eyes with him and sneers. The castle food's inedible. A single, painfully simple truth slams into Alvale and rips the words clean from his mouth. The staff, listening from afar, freeze in stunned silence as the child's words slam into them. Disbelief crackled through them. The great Alvale castle's food, could it really be bad? Mars's voice cracks as they confess that only their great-uncle's cooking actually tastes good. Alvale balls his hand into a tight fist, iron resolve blazing in his eyes. He bellows they'll eat at Nadiai, Sujisoba every single day from now on. Mars's face ignites into a bright grin as they blurt out, "Can we have curry again?" Alvela flashed a grin, vowing they'd hunt down countless mouth-watering treats together. He thrusts his hand toward the other bowl, pitching cake soba as the perfect example. Mars echoed the unfamiliar name Cook Soba, repeating it with curiosity crackling in his voice. Ava ladles a steaming, savory spoonful of noodle soup and thrusts it toward them. Mars's eyes snap wide with delight as he shouts, "This is delicious!" The kid explodes with joy, refreshed and shouting for another heaping bowl of curry. Alville erupts in a booming laugh, thrilled to see Mars teeming with life again. From that day on, Alville shuttled Mars to curry set after curry set. Nadietsu Jisoba's staff flung open their arms and showered their special guest with warm smiles every single time. One day, Mars strode in alone, confidence blazing, and the whole team exploded into cheers to welcome him. Alville barked a command, catapulting his chefs toward the Den Guard Federation to secure its spices. The castle's cuisine exploded into culinary brilliance, and the royal court showered every dish with rapturous praise. Night swallowed the peaceful city of Alvale, plunging its streets into silence. Nadetsugasoba's sign looms over the now darkened shopfront. The doorbell dead silent. The place is shut for the day. You could bellow that business for the day has officially concluded. He swept through the room, beaming, and loudly congratulated his exhausted but elated staff, roaring, "You crushed it! Phenomenal job!" He laughs that they were slammed non-stop, yet he beams with gratitude for every frantic second. He grabs Chap, voice raw with gratitude, and confesses they couldn't have pulled it off without him. Chap shrugs off the praise, modest and steady. Lutha slams a fist into his palm and swears he'll push himself even harder tomorrow. A blinding notification screen explodes into view, leaving Yukito frozen in shock. His gift skyrocketed to level 7. Boom, beer and croquettes unlocked on the menu. A blush of pure joy exploded across Yukito's face as he whooped, "The beer's finally here!" Chap and Lutia go wide-eyed and shoot back. "You're talking about the ale we know?" Yukito's fists curl into iron as he roars that this is a revolution for the drinkers of this world. He roars that his lager beer demolishes ale's flavor and declares it a revolution. Chap's face went stone cold as he barked, "Is this the Binheim Empire's lager?" He exposes how the Empire seized exclusive control of the lager, locking it away from the public. Their prized lager is so mouth-watering that diplomats often brandish it as a bargaining chip. It hit you. The Weinheim Empire was despised, and his 2 employees reeled in shock. Chap snarls that they're lethal rivals who've already clashed in full-scale war. Yukito's imagination runs wild, picturing the brewers forged in a country so notorious. He leans in, dying to know what kind of beer they're brewing with that fierce devotion. Lutia pleads for him to stay away, voice breaking, but Yukito squares his shoulders and trusts his gift to push the darkness back. He fires up the crew, practically buzzing at the thought of beer-fueled, jam-packed nights ahead. He flashed a sly grin, betraying that beer wasn't the only new addition. He roars that the next level will unlock croquet's soba on the menu. Chap froze, baffled, while Lutia erupted with glee, declaring it a symbolic dish. Yukito exclaims as the crispy croquette gives way, softening perfectly into the savory, sober broth. Howling with manic glee, he proclaims the dish the perfect match for a cold beer. Lucia nods, a fond smile blooming as she vividly recalls her uncle reveling in that exact combination. You could hype this new menu so loud, people swear it will blast the world's beer craze to its peak. Chap's gut tightened with doubt. Can they really pull this off? Yukito scoffed and waved the worry away like it was nothing. Let him flex to the heavens. When people rave over his soba, every bit of showing off pays off. His passion ignited a blaze in Lutia and Chap, and they vowed to give it everything they'd got. Yukatos's face snaps into focus, thought blazing across his features as a sudden memory hits him. He leaned in and shot Lutia a quick question. Any other famous drinks besides the Weinheim lager? Lydia leans in, eyes alight, and whispers, You mean the dwarves' legendary fire wine? She declares it a potent elixir, ale mixed with medicinal herbs. She jabbed the map, pinpointing the dwarves' autonomous region in the northeast. Blindside them by blurting, Are you like the dwarves from fantasy stories? Luta growled. They were short, squat blocks of muscle who looked like children. Chap grins, snapping that they're a stubborn race of craftsmen who live for their drink. Yukito's mind ignites with one burning question. Why do the dwarves command a self-governed enclave within the human kingdom? We slam back nearly 500 years to a south teeming with dwarves, their forges roaring and halls overflowing with life. A savage civil war exploded, tearing the Weta clan from their homeland and casting them into desperate exile. Right then, a towering, blazing stranger burst into view, Surtur, the fire giant. The monstrous fire giant tore across the continent, incinerating cities and turning whole regions into smoldering ash. Surtur finally fell beneath the blade of another stranger, a legendary swordsman. When the unified nations collapsed, chaos erupted and raged on for a long while. Banished and uprooted, the Weta clan was driven to trudge across the ravaged continent. At last, they burst into the newly established cathedral kingdom. They staked their claim on the barren Dagato Mountains, a place humans had written off as worthless. The Weta clan swore the unforgiving peak would be their final home. Their first task? They drove picks into the mountain's unyielding bedrock and began carving it away. They tore into the stone and forged a magnificent city deep underground. There they plunged into the hunt, scouring every shadow for the ore veins humans had missed. Two Dwarven miners lock eyes, wide-eyed with surprise, their faces lighting up in a burst of raw excitement. They finally struck a rich vein of war, buried deep within the mountain. In less than a century, they carved barren land into a roaring city of artisans. Right then, a bold new ale burst onto the scene. Dwarves are a race born for the forge, naturally gifted to smith and craft masterpieces. One day, a Weta clansman burst onto the scene, born with a fierce gift for brewing. Before this, people dismissed wheat as mere animal fodder, or the ingredient for bland, everyday loaves. He pulled off the impossible, coaxing potent alcohol out of a single, humble grain. Back then, everyone swore alcohol could only be forged from fruit, grapes becoming wine. The Weta clan, minds alight with genius, unleashed their recipe to the entire world. Al burst onto the scene, seizing the crown as the era's signature drink. The inventor emerged not as a machine mastermind, but as a lone human stranger from a world called Midgard. They discovered him near Dagato Mountain, and the Weta clan swept him into their care. Wishing to avoid attention, he melted into their midst and cloaked his true identity. The gods poured their blessing into him, the divine power to brew. He repaid the dwarves' kindness by pouring his gift into brewing a daring, brand-new ale. The brew exploded across my taste buds, so unbelievably delicious it left me speechless. The other dwarves gaped, swarmed him, and implored him to teach them his methods. He poured every last secret of ale brewing into them, holding nothing back. He thundered they'd never recreate the taste without his gift. Roughly 400 years ago, the legend of a magical brew burst into being. The dwarves thrived in silence, their secret riches gnawing at the cathedral kingdom. At first, the kingdom flat-out refused to officially let the dwarves settle there. The king leans in as his advisor lays out how the dwarves clawed a living from the brutal land. An advisor bursts in, nearly shouting that the dwarves are raking in gold from their new ale. Though refugees, they hustled, bartering scarce resources and patenting their ale to squeeze out cold, hard profit. The king bemoaned, furious and defeated. They're not citizens, so he can't collect a single coin in taxes from them. Chaos erupted when the rival Formoria clan, exiled from their homeland, stormed in and turned the whole situation upside down. An advisor sounds the alarm. The Formoria clan could bargain for peace and carve out their own enclave. The king's council recoils, convinced Moria's intervention will ignite the fires of war. The king demanded to know what course of action would resolve this. The king leans in, eyes like steel, hanging on every anxious warning from his advisors. The cunning king had already hatched a brilliant plan. He thundered a decree that recognized the entire Weta clan as citizens of the kingdom. He bestowed the entire Dagato mountain region upon them, declaring it their autonomous domain. He swore no other noble would ever dare meddle in their lands again. They anointed the clan's leader, Grand Duke, elevating him to the pinnacle of aristocracy. He rechristened them Dagato and began exacting taxes. The king's advisors erupted in cheers, war averted and lucrative new tax revenue locked in. For 400 years, the Ueta Dagato stood unbowed, fiercely guarding their independence and autonomy. Today, the House of Ueta Dagato rises like a roaring banner, the kingdom's unmistakable symbol of power. It declared the kingdom would have been overrun by Weinheim without their aid. The first-class weapons they forged now arm every regiment of the royal army. The king roared to Victor and Heisen, "The dwarves are indispensable!" He blasted a warning. Never let ill will surface. Protect your friendship like your life depends on it. The two young princes snapped to attention and swore to carry out their father's command. Years later, a visitor strides before the king, bows, and urgently asks if his brother is well. Grand Duchess Heidi Ueta Dagato now reigns, a renowned hero. The shot bursts wide, unveiling the towering, awe-inspiring silhouette of Alvale Castle. Inside, Marquis Elvel reads the letter, and a grim scowl snaps across his face. He snaps the letter into a crumpled ball, a stunned cry tearing from his throat. Rage boiling in his veins, he roared a furious summon for his knight Adamant. Adamant answered instantly. A ripped letter screams that the sender will arrive in just a few days. As Heidi tears forward, Alvale crumples in despair, lashing out and blaming his brother for plunging them into this predicament. Hooves pounded like war drums across the snowy field, charging straight toward Alvale. Two exhausted dwarven advisors, faces carved with strain, implored their leader to stop. Their formidable leader, Grand Duchess Heidi, cut through their desperate pleas for rest with a single, icy dismissal. Heidi roars, "I'm launching an urgent quest to taste the legendary sake the king mentioned, right now!" She roared, whipping her mighty steed into a frenzied sprint, throat burning with desperate thirst. She vows to sink her lips into the fabled Nadi Tsujasoba, a brew that leaves Dwarvenel in the dust. A flashback bursts to life as young Heidi leans in, devouring every word of her father's lesson. Her father rips the veil away and lays bare the dwarves' crushing debt to the cathedral kingdom. He rips open their past, revealing how they became refugees, exiled from their homeland of Formoria. Tears burn his eyes as he remembers the humans who granted them refuge and freedom. Skeptical young Heidi scoffs, waving off her father's tale as cloying, sentimental drivel. Her father roared with laughter, unfurling tale after tale of the kingdom's lavish generosity to their people. He boomed with pride that their leader had been elevated to the noble rank of Grand Duke. Shrewd Heidi smelled political motives hiding behind the kingdom's kindness. He grinned, chuckled his agreement, and praised her razor-sharp, spirited mind. He slams their solemn debt in her face, growling that they can't turn down every plea. Heidi leans in, hanging on every word as her father's voice deepens into a solemn, weighty hush. He snaps, "Duty binds us, not chains. We are not slaves," he implores her. "When the stakes are highest, let your soul be your guide." Young Heidi stared, confusion flaring across her face as her father's deep wisdom raced past her, just out of reach. He jabbed a finger at her, pressing her to get ready to lead, and she protested. He cackled, dared anyone to object, and declared she's the only one strong enough to succeed him. He taunts with a wicked grin, declaring that of all his children, only she has the iron grit to take on the role. Another memory ignites. Heidi hatches bold plans to ease her mother's relentless toil. She coos cute at her little brother, and he fires back a ridiculous burn that cracks everyone up. Their mother lunges after terrified Heidi, brandishing a knife, enraged by the teasing. A knife of sorrow twists through her as memories of her beloved father Othman crash back. He died 30 years ago. Now she shoulders the crushing weight of leading her people. Her advisors huddle, sizing up her sons and declaring with iron certainty that one will seize the Grand Dukedom. A covered wagon thundered down a long, dust-choked road beneath a brooding, cloudy sky. Heidi Muses finally conceded the inevitable. After 30 long years, she's calling it. She's retiring. From inside the wagon, an advisor erupts, shouting that she's still too young. Heidi wearily jolts him with a sharp reminder. Her 60th birthday is barreling toward him. The advisor barks at her to fling aside her weariness. Their work waits. Far on the horizon, the capital erupted into view, a sprawling maze of stone buildings. Their wagons thundered toward the capital's grand gates, the castle looming above like a watchful giant. They marshal the twice-yearly weapons convoys, the lifeblood that keeps their domain standing. Gleaming masterwork. Dwarven-forged swords and shields line the armory, poised to arm the kingdom's knights. As Grand Duchess, Heidi must personally take the reins and oversee this vital delivery. A royal official thrusts the inventory list into her hands. She nods, ready to inspect every entry. She wrestles with telling the king she's retiring, every ache a brutal reminder that age is catching up. Flanked by her advisors, Heidi strode into the king's office for an audience. The king lifts his ornate teacup to his lips and steals a single, silent sip. He leans in, voice low, and plunges into a grave matter with the visiting Grand Duchess. An official storms forward to condemn the king's casual tone, but the king sneers and brushes him aside. Heidi erupts in booming laughter, shrugging off her rowdy, blunt Dwarven nature with a defiant grin. Her expression snaps to business. She leans in, eyes razor-sharp, and orders him to continue. The king unfurled a scroll and demanded a 20% increase in their next delivery. He slid the massive scroll across the table, pressing it into her hands so she could pore over every detail. Heidi and her advisor gasped, shock slamming into them as their eyes raced down the sprawling list. Disbelief snaps across her face the moment that outrageous request lands. The list screams of a massive arms surge, naming an avalanche of weaponry, including rare Methru armaments. Heidi greenlights the 20% increase, but doubt flickers across her face and tightens her jaw. The king sits grimly, jaw clenched and eyes narrowed. The request came too suddenly and smelled of treachery. Heidi snaps that if she'd been given more notice, the request could have been pulled off. She knows this sudden demand will rip through every one of their existing production plans. She fears obeying the order will siphon her domain dry, leaving nothing behind. The king owns up to being unreasonable, pointing to a recent drop in order. Heidi jabbed a finger at one entry on the list and snapped, "Explain this now!" Her hand quivers as she hisses the warning. They are preparing for war. The king flatly denies any intent to attack. The Weinheim Empire openly seeks war. He declares the preparations defensive, an essential shield built to keep conflict from erupting. Heidi plants her feet and bellows that her people are not slaves to the kingdom. She slaps the document, staring down as the question claws at her. Is now the time to refuse? The king and his advisor freeze in dead silence, breaths caught, waiting for her final decision. The king's hawk-eyed stare sliced the room open, exposing just how grave the political storm had become. He drops the bomb. His spies have reported suspicious movements from the Empire. Heidi and her advisors reel back, faces draining and jaws dropping as the alarming news crashes over them like a thunderbolt. He demands they shore up their defenses, calling it a necessary precaution. Heidi's breath stops as the Weinheim Empire's menace crashes into her world. It's terrifyingly, undeniably real. The story rips open the long, frayed saga of tense clashes with the aggressive empire. Heidi throws herself into her duty, vowing to stand and fight for the country they all share. Stress coiled in her chest as she faced the towering task, every heartbeat hammering home just how brutal it would be. She snaps that even with materials in hand, forcing her craftsmen will be nearly impossible. She snaps, "Refining mithril on such a short timeline? Impossible!" She rips the veil off mithril's arcane powers, revealing its living magic, fickle alloys, and the blistering crucible conditions that make forging it nearly impossible. Dwarven craftsmen, armed with special gifts, bend mithril to their will and forge it far more effectively than any other smith. She hatches a daring plan, focused solely on mithril, and they could finish it in 6 months. It hits them. This plan will force the craftsman into an immense, soul-crushing sacrifice. Her father's words ignite like a spark in her mind. She slaps her hands together and decides. She jabbed a finger forward, eyes blazing, and accepted the king's daunting demand. The king and his advisor sagged with relief at her sudden acceptance. Heidi flashed a grin and vowed Adolf's word bound them like iron. Memories of the last war slam through her. This task is a whisper compared to the inferno she survived. Gratitude burning in his chest, the king roared he'd grant her any reward she wanted, and still pay her. His grin sharpens as he vows to grant any wish that falls within his royal power. Heidi flashes a sly grin and probes the edges of the king's generous offer, daring it to bend. Her advisor frets as she flirts with disaster. She stands defiant, convinced she's right. The king roars his assent to her challenge, and the two leaders lock eyes, an electric, knowing spark igniting between them. Heidi silences the hall with a bold demand. "Let me taste the kingdom's finest sake." Her advisor's jaw drops as she plucks a steaming, delicious cup of sake, instead of grabbing another heap of glittering gold. Tiny, ecstatic Heidi exclaims that for a dwarf, sake is the water of life. The king dragged a finger through his mustache, eyes narrowing as he weighed her unusual request. She slams down the gauntlet, daring him to craft a brew that eclipses the legendary Dwarven ale. The king freezes, weighing her plea, then claws through his memory for any trace of that legendary dream. Heidi explodes into laughter, certain beyond doubt that no drink could ever top that. The king's grin dies. Seriousness floods his face as he reveals the drink is real. The dwarves freeze, jaws dropping, when word spreads that a drink might be better than theirs. Their shock explodes into razor-sharp intrigue, stunned disbelief, and a bubbling electric excitement. The king pins her with a cold stare and demands, "Do you know the Third Gift Research Institute in the capital?" He leans in and reveals the director's recent report dropped an astonishing bombshell. The king thundered about a new beer, a heavenly nectar from the Diet Sujisoba. He christened it Nadaite Sujisoba. The Grand Duchess froze. That name meant nothing to her. She laughed, roaring with pride that their ale trounced every human brew. The king's face froze into a stone mask, every feature carved with grim seriousness. He locked eyes with her, unblinking, ironclad conviction burning in his gaze. Her laughter snapped off as a cold jolt ripped through her. He wasn't joking. She bellowed, "Saddle up! Ride hard for Elvale this instant!" A newcomer stormed toward Elvale, the old capital, poised to shatter its fragile peace. At the city gates, a guard flicked his hand and the humble wooden cart rolled through. The driver tossed a quick, "Thanks," and the whole exchange slid by cleanly. No drama, no surprises. The guards snapped their heads up. A strange, far-off sound had torn through the silence. One snapped, "What's wrong?" as the other heard a mounting roar. Shock snapped across their faces as the rumble swelled into a thunderous roar. Dwarven cavalry ripped into the city, an avalanche of iron-shod hooves and searing fury. "Tell Heisen," she roared, "that Heidi Wider-Degado has come for a drink." Inside the grand castle, Marquis Alvé stood like a coiled blade, every nerve electric as he waited for the unannounced guest. He snapped, adamant that one day would never be enough to pull off the reception. Heidi burst in laughing, jabbed a finger at Heisen, and demanded he start acting like a considerate host. Alvale grinned. No dwarf has ever been able to resist the siren call of delicious sake. She tore into the pampered nobles at court, mocking them for doing nothing while their people suffered. I shot back, picturing her foul mouth bulldozing through aristocratic salons and wondering how it survived. Relief flooded her when the fawning nobles stayed away. Alvale bristled, calling her gladness audacious. She leaned in, eyes like knives, and snapped that his fragility was doing him more harm than good. She'd long known his relentless energy, and her knowing it only riled him more. She snapped, "Heisen, you're harboring a special stranger." She already knew his name, Yukito, a man from Earth who poured drinks so delicious they tasted like magic. Alvale secured Yukito's safety, then served every customer with blazing impartiality. No favorites, no exceptions. He exhaled sharply, and she asked, "What is it you wanted to discuss?" Alvale roared that she could down the beer at Nandai Tsujisoba. His brother's letter had already spelled out a single burning desire. Her grin lit the room as she eagerly asked if her loyal retainers could join the tasting. She taunted him with a wicked grin. "Those lofty, noble words don't suit you one bit." Alvale flung the shop into view. The dwarves froze, jaws dropping and eyes wide with disbelief. The Grand Duchess froze, breath stolen as an impossible, otherworldly sight unfurled before her. Her jaw dropped as she took in the walls, flawless, practical panes of glass. My jaw dropped at the window. The tiny food models were carved with impossible skill, every crumb and glaze rendered so lifelike I could almost taste them. Inside, the gleaming interior and flawless furniture dwarfed everything she'd ever known. Vale spun to her, a cocky smirk curling on his lips, and asked what she thought. Speech died in her throat. She admitted, this was truly something special. Alvale spun her a vision of glass towers in Yukito's world, stabbing into the sky. She yanked him, shouting, disbelief roaring at those impossible structures. "You fool!" she sneered inwardly, stunned as she took in how staggeringly advanced this earth had become. Alvale barked at them to hurry. He only had the shop for an hour. Excitement exploded through her as she cried, "That's right, beer!" A soft hiss split the air as the strange entrance yawned open before them. The dwarves tumbled in, eyes wide and jaws slack, astonishment written on every face. From the Duchess to her men, every dwarf sat spellbound, hanging on her every word. Her eyes darted everywhere as she scrambled, desperate to find the magical device that would throw the door open. A retainer thrust a finger at the tiny, unassuming sensor mounted above the frame. Inside, Lutia and Chap launched themselves forward, arms wide, greeting the esteemed guest with a blazing, heartfelt welcome. "I'll march up and apologize to the staff for barging in like a roaring storm." Her gaze tore through the room as she hunted the black-haired stranger the king had described. Lutia declared the manager was in the kitchen, whipping the place into shape for their party. She swept them to a table, eyes sharp as she declared that sober shops always pull in the heaviest drinkers. Heidi planted herself on the hardwood seat, her expression curdling into a bitter scowl. A heartbeat later, surprise flared across her face, flushing her cheeks with delight. She hoisted the soft cushion like a trophy and whooped, ecstatic that her bottom wouldn't ache. A veiled stranger barked for 4 beers. Heidi snapped that dwarves only drink water. Ludius's grin lit the room as he gave a crisp nod to the Grand Duchess's exact request. She barked into the kitchen. 4 beers for the party! Alvil's gaze snapped to the kitchen. The stranger stood there, unmistakable. Heidi leaned in and asked bluntly, "Why aren't you drinking?" Alvale shrugged and said, "I'll pass." Work pinned him down and she snorted, declaring dwarves drink whenever they please. Luthi burst back in bearing drinks the instant Albali began unfolding their customs. Luria slid the beer forward. Heidi's eyes shot wide, disbelief ripping across her face. She slid a glass of water into place beside the magnificent mug of beer, the calm next to a storm of foam. What is this jockey?" she choked, transfixed by the glass vessel. Her gaze snagged on the glass. Just like the door, it was flawless, a perfectly uniform sheet. It screamed the work of a master craftsman wielding advanced molds. She then leaned in and probed the beer, which wore ale's disguise but hid something entirely different. The golden liquid shimmered like trapped sunlight, perfectly clear, not a single speck of sediment. Silky foam and a jaw-dropping transparency slammed into her senses. She'd never seen anything like it. She clutched the handle, her heart banging against her ribs, absolutely certain of how it would taste. The first sip hit her like an electric shock. Whoa, it's so cold. The whole drink slammed cold as ice, an unbelievable luxury. A wide, giddy grin erupted across her face, pure pleasure blazing in every curve. She slammed the heavy mug to her lips and knocked it back in one fierce gulp. She snatched the otherworldly beer and slammed it back, chugging ferociously, gulp after gulp exploding out of her like untamed thunder. Her retainers surged after her, hoisting cups and chugging with the same roaring fervor. She slammed the empty mug onto the table. The impact exploded like a thunderclap. She exploded into a triumphant "Puh!" and roared, "That was absolutely delicious!" She jabbed a finger at Alviel, eyes blazing, and demanded, "What is this?" If that was sock, what had they been guzzling their whole lives? Her men roared their approval, swearing it was leagues ahead of their own ale. Alvail's smirk curled as he challenged, "Admit defeat?" Heat rose in her cheeks and she nodded. Her eyes snapped open. Both were malt liquors, so she plotted to sharpen her ale into a superior brew. They couldn't accept ordinary. There had to be a way to make their ale taste legendary. A flash of clarity hit her. She snapped her fingers and shouted, "We'll chill it!" She shouted to Lutia, excitement crackling in her voice as she ordered another round for everyone. She then fired off a request for a food pairing, dead certain it would be utterly mouth-watering. Lutia paused a beat, then slammed down her choice, spicy curry rice. Heidi beamed, certain a fiery curry would sing in perfect harmony with that ice-cold, refreshing beer. Alvail seized the moment and ordered the temprasoba for himself. The staff slammed the massive order into the kitchen, and Yukito snapped his confirmation. Heidi hollered Alvail's name, and he spun around, eyes locking on her to see what she wanted. She snapped, "Go tell the king I'm now happy to oblige his request." He snapped, "Why won't you tell me yourself?" She shot back that she wasn't in the mood. Bigger, urgent goals ignited in her, and she lunged to accomplish them immediately. Her new quest ignited. She vowed to transform their ale with every trick she'd learned today. A lifetime couldn't hold back the inferno of passion roaring inside her. Grand Duchess Heidi grins, dead certain she'll set her dwarves ablaze with passion after this tale. Markiel V locks his gaze on her, noting the white-hot determination newly ignited inside her. Heidi thunders about the glorious future of her domain, and Alvail scoffs, goading her to actually pick a real goal. The dwarves explode into thunderous roars, hailing curry and beer as the perfect pairing. A caption flashes. Each dwarf slams back 5 giant mugs of beer in a single hour. We slam into the rugged Dagato Mountains, where a dragon roars and thrashes as it's being slain. In white robes, a lone swordsman stands unshaken, sword ready, squaring off against a towering beast that roars like thunder. Deep within the dungeon, a massive dragon egg, its shell split like a jagged wound, broods amid the rubble. The swordsman Duke Sasaki coolly boomed, "An lizard this massive is a sight to behold." The colossal dragon's foot slams into the earth, the blow rocking the world with thunderous, ground-shattering force. The young adventurer roared, "Run, old man! That beast is far too powerful!" Duke Sasaki, unnervingly calm, announces he's beginning and hoists his sword. Sasaki's blade flashed in one fluid arc, shearing the dragon's massive arm clean from its body. The severed limb slams into the earth with a sickening thud. The beast's attack dies with it. Sasaki's gaze hardened as disappointment seethed. His opponent was pitifully weak, not even a real challenge. Realization detonates in the adventurer. He's standing face to face with the legendary great swordsman, Duke Sasaki. Sasaki's face snapped into the cold, unblinking stare of a demon forged for war. A flashback detonates, hurling us into young Sasaki's past in a tiny farming principality. He plants himself before the shadowed tomb in the vassal state of Ardud. Behold the grave of his ancestor, the stranger Kojiro Sasaki, who vanquished Surtur. Kogiro became a legendary swordsman, carving his own destiny with steel and iron will, born without a gift. As a kid, Sasaki bellowed, "I'm Kodaro," daring the giant Surtur to try him. He and a friend lock blades in a fierce wooden sword duel, trading rapid, thudding blows. Young Sasaki's final strike sent his friend crashing to the ground, and he loomed over him with a triumphant smirk, victory sparking in his eyes. Brimming with pride, he swore his ancestor had outmatched the famed rival Musashi. His friends erupt, cheering that his ancestor Kogiro is an absolute legend. Young Sasaki's own divine gift blazed to life in blacksmithing. My older brother, the heir, wields the great hero's legendary, earth-shattering power. His parents soothed his fears and urged him to grab a hammer and become a blacksmith. Sasaki slammed his fist and declared that if Kojiro clawed his way to the top without a gift, he'd claw his way there too. At 15, he broke free from home and charged into the world with only a single sword. He roamed the land, battled night after night, and plunged into dungeons to sharpen his skills. Beaten time and again, he clenched his jaw and vowed he'd seize victory the next time. He curled his fingers into a white-knuckled fist, a relentless hunger to become even stronger roaring through him. 30 years he battled, every scar carving him into a legend. Then a black dragon defeated him. Now he prowls the city's dark, unfamiliar streets at night. He sits alone, eyes aflame, scanning the horizon for a rival truly worthy of him. He snaps to attention as locals buzz about a city figure whose power is undeniable. They whisper Lutia's name across Alval, a dungeon explorer who wields the Sword King gift. Craving a real test, he bolts straight for the Alvale Dungeon Explorers Guild. The receptionist beams and drops the news. Lutia Selin has already retired. He snaps, demanding to know where she is right now, and the receptionist just shrugs, guessing she's on shift. He gaped. How could the Sword King be slinging coffee behind the counter of a dingy diner? Shock slams into him, and his stomach betrays him with a loud, mortifying rumble. Crushed and bone-weary, he collapses and lets sleep claim him as daylight pours in. He freezes, eyes devouring the old royal castle. It's been fully restored since he last saw it. He once stood electrified by the sight. Now it leaves him utterly hollow. His eyes snapped wide as he locked onto something impossibly out of place. He freezes, eyes fixed on Notai Tsujisoba, a gleaming modern shop wedged into the old castle wall. Confusion claws at him as he mutters under his breath, "What is this?" He zeroes in. It's a restaurant, and he spits out the question. How could it possibly pierce the thick castle wall? Its strange exterior fools the eye. He watches it erupt with bustling activity. He cranes his neck and locks onto the sign, its bold characters shouting, "Nadai Tsujisoba." Recognition strikes. This script echoes the very handwriting in his ancestor Kojiro's journal. A pint-sized chibi young Sasaki pops into view, blinking and utterly flummoxed as he stares at the unreadable text. Suspicion spikes. Could the owner be that stranger from Henimoto? He yanks the door open and steps inside. The door glides open by itself, a jaw-dropping over-the-top contraption for an entryway. He steps inside and spots two young men, grinning as they trade cheerful banter. He freezes, jaw dropping, as commoners and nobles sit shoulder to shoulder, calmly sharing a meal. He spots an elf at the counter, tearing into his plate with a shocking, ferocious hunger. Lutia, the ever-cheerful waitress, strides over with a tray and greets him with a radiant, welcoming smile. She scans the crowd, declares the shop jam-packed right now, and apologizes for the wait. She beckons him to the counter and he slides onto a stool. He slides in beside the elf Tessaria, who serenely savors her meal. He snatches the sleek, laminated card and his eyes lock on it. It's the menu. He stares at the contents. His eyes snap wide as bewilderment slams into him. He squints, grappling with pictures of noodles, rice, and a drink labeled beer. Lutia returns, slides a glass of water in front of him, beaming a radiant grin. She beams, "Water's free. Ask any time and I'll refill your cup." He gapes, disbelief burning in his eyes as flawless ice cubes clink against his glass. He gapes, stunned that someone conjures ice with magic and just hands it out for free. He lifts the glass like a live grenade, presses it to his lips, and draws a tiny, cautious sip. He gasped, stunned. The flavor slammed into him, pure and ice-clear like melting snow. Tasting water this pure, he's certain the meal will be worth every second of the wait. He eyes the menu again, zeroing in on cold soba, an icy blast to conquer the brutal summer heat. He spots 4 different kinds and freezes, torn over which one to pick. The elf Tessaria swoops back beside him, voice soft as silk, asking if he's struggling to decide. Her warm smile lights up as she reads him instantly. It's his first time at Nandai Tsuja Soba. He locks eyes with her, confusion flaring, and echoes the restaurant's strange name like he's tasted a foreign spell. She giggles, smirking as she snaps. His face screams, "Newcomer." She clocked it instantly. He was locked in a battle with the menu, unable to commit to an order. He pins her with a searing stare and snaps, "How could you possibly know all this?" She flicks a finger with a mischievous grin and insists you start with the restaurant's basics. He feels the weight of the fundamentals and slams his choice into place. He shoots his hand up toward Lutia and, with a polite smile, declares he's ready to place his order. He jabbed a finger at the menu, claimed the more sober option, and Lutia nodded, sealing the decision. Lutia bellows for one more isoba. The kitchen chap snaps an immediate acknowledgement. Waiting, Sasaki's curiosity gnaws at him. What form will this mysterious morisoba take? The dish lands like treasure, a pristine plate of gleaming noodles beside a tiny bowl of glossy dipping sauce. He strokes his chin, eyes alight as he plots the perfect strike to slurp the scattered noodles from the steaming broth. Tessaria leans in, voice sharp, urging him to dunk a mouthful of noodles into the steaming broth. He watches, stunned, as she schools him. She puffs her chest and proclaims herself the shop's master. She leans in and declares chopped naganeji onions slam a fiery kick into any dish. She paints the potent green wasabi paste as a savage spice that rips tears from your eyes. She snaps, "Add it sparingly," and he nods, gratitude lighting his face as he thanks her for the kind instruction. The chatter lights a ravenous craving for morisoba in him, so Tessaria snaps and orders up a monstrous portion. He leans in and asks if she's still eating. She snaps that she must finish before her next dish arrives. Sasaki snatches a pair of disposable chopsticks from the container on the counter. A sharp crack rips the air as he snaps the wooden utensils apart, every movement honed to a razor edge. He fumbles for the noodles, every move awkward, his face locked in fierce concentration. Duke Sasaki hoisted the morisoba noodles, his gaze razor-sharp as it dissected every strand with cold calculation. He plunges the icy noodles into the dark, fragrant dipping sauce. A thunderous slurp rips the air as he clamps down on the soba, taking his first momentous bite. His eye snaps wide, shock ripping through him at the wildly unfamiliar, almost otherworldly flavor. The flavor catapults him back to a fishing village as salt and brine crash over his memory, the sea's presence undeniable. He shut his eyes, drank in the one-of-a-kind scent with relish, and declared, "Delicious." He hoists another perfectly arranged bundle of soba noodles and slurps it down. Those perfectly uniform noodles deliver an incredible texture and glide down like silk. A blade wielder himself, he bowed to the chef's razor-sharp mastery. Failing to devour every last bite of this magnificent dish would be sheer disrespect. Next, he plunges the chopped green onions into the sauce. He dunks the noodles again, this time cloaked in fresh onions. He tears into another bite, slurping loudly as the new flavor combo detonates across his tongue. He roars that the crisp crunch and fiery spice are a perfect game-changing boost. His expression snaps into stone as he steels himself for the final mysterious condiment. He steels himself and plunges into the wasabi, the last flavor standing. He remembers Syria's warning. This spice would wring tears from him. He thrusts a chunk of wasabi straight into the sauce. The soup's fully saturated. Doubt claws at him. Was he too hasty? No. He decides I must be bold, then plunges in and bites off a massive mouthful. A searing bolt of spice rips through him, electrifying every nerve. He rockets backward in his seat, utterly crushed by the wasabi's raw, explosive power. My nose, he thought, clutching his face as a vaporous heat slammed into it. A blast of pungent air slams into him. Tears burst from his eyes as he gags and fights for breath. He lunges for the ice-cold glass, snatching it for instant relief. He sucked in a jagged breath and confessed he'd been utterly unprepared for that. This time, he edges the noodles into the sauce, every move slow and deliberate as if he's defusing a bomb. He sinks a gentle bite. Calm focus snaps into place across his face. A crisp, refreshing scent laced with a whisper of spice catapults him to a serene mountaintop. He shuts his eyes and savors the perfect balance of flavors, every taste hitting him like a revelation. The soba hits like something from another world. Each bite explodes with pure, irresistible deliciousness. It hits him like a jolt. This is the shop's core flavor, the very heartbeat of the place. He savors the last bite, a grin spreading, and admits it's been ages since he's eaten this well. Throughout his brutal life, food never once crossed his mind. For 30 years, one thing consumed him, the relentless pursuit of strength. He lived for the blade. Every breath, every scar, every waking hour bent toward perfecting his swordsmanship. He felt a memory slam into him, a time when merely swinging a sword was pure, reckless joy. He's torn. Build a dojo to train the next generation, or walk away and sink into a peaceful life by the sea. A quiet sigh slips from him as he stares at the new path unfurling before him. A god leans in, eyes cold, and asks, "Can Duke shed his miserable past and truly change?" He watches the staff slip away, certain they're gone, while Lutia stays behind and smiles warmly. Later that night, a silver crescent pierced the starry sky, stars winking like scattered embers. Yukito cracked open a beer, savored the first cool sip, and proclaimed it the perfect end to a long day. He exhales a blissful sigh and gushes that the beer is delicious, so incredibly refreshing. Lydia laughs at how slammed they were and urges, "Add SACA to the menu." A notification burst into view in front of a stunned Yukito. "Level up!" Boom! The next menu slams down, a hearty meat soba and a mouth-watering croquette soba. He whoops and hoists his glass. Croquette soba will be the perfect match for beer. His eyes lock on meat sober, now available both hot and cold. A confident grin splits his face as he thinks, "This is great." Arles now simmers under a sweltering summer, the sun scorching every cobblestone. The new stamina-boosting meat soba dishes burst into view, every sizzling slice and steaming slurp captured in mouth-watering detail. A memory slams into him. The cold meat he ate while sober was his favorite meal. The menu has exploded since the shop first opened. He beams at his staff, yet watches them drown under a rising tide of work. The truth slams into him. They're desperately short on staff. Sweat beads on his brow as he wonders if he can rustle up one or two more workers. A thunderous growl ripped from the girl's hollow, ravenous belly. Tears carved tracks down her cheeks as she screamed, "I'm starving!" The next morning, dawn shatters the sky over Alvale as the sun rockets up, igniting the city in molten gold. He steels himself and strides up to a staff member mid-breakfast to speak. He steels himself, determined to light a fire under them and launch everyone into another hectic, non-stop day. Ludian chap arrived, grinning like the sun, and flooded him with cheerful "good mornings." He slams down their special staff meal, croquette soba and devil's onigiri. They explode with excitement. They've never tasted either of these new dishes. He rips the lid off his secret recipe and shows exactly how to craft the mouth-watering devil's onigiri. They clasp their palms together with beaming smiles and dive into the feast. Chap shuts his eyes and sinks his teeth into the onigiri, the first bite exploding with flavor. A grin split his face as he thought to himself how brilliantly it had turned out. Lutia and Chap both burst out, "These onigirias are insanely delicious." Chap crowed it's the best the instant a hand pressed against the glass. Another loud, desperate rumble tore free from the girl's stomach. She buries her face against the door and whispers, "I'm starving." A soft click slices the air as the automatic door's lock surrenders. The door slides open, then the mysterious girl glides across the threshold. Lutia whirls to her co-workers and snaps, "I need to consult with you." Her stomach erupted in a thunderous growl, demanding food. The three staffs snapped around, shock ripping through them at the sudden arrival. Her finger quivered as she jabbed at the triangular food and cried, "That looks delicious!" Chap blurted, "Did I forget to lock the door?" The truth slams down. She's a member of the demon race. The demon race splinters into brutal forms, snarling goblins and oozing slimes. The dragonoids, the fiercest demons, dominate the Sankaku kingdom with iron claws. The king unveils the century-old rite every royal child must face when they turn 100. The first demon king devoured every scrap of knowledge and forged their nation with iron resolve. Princess Sharon's father thundered, "Happy 100th birthday!" He snaps, "Now it's your turn to take on the training." She fires back, insisting that being the youngest makes the training pointless for her. Her father bared a razor grin. His choice was ironclad, no turning back. She hurls one sharp command, "Go, Zrenye!" and goads her daughter into motion. Colossal doors crash shut, dooming her and sealing away his warning. She blasts into spare, disbelief exploding in her chest as she reels from being cast out. A key blazes into being, turns with a decisive click, and throws her hidden gift wide into the light. It lets her pick any lock, pure thief's craft running through her hands. Panic claws at her throat as she screams, "I could never be a criminal!" She plants her feet and vows she'll never join the dungeon ranks or fight a single monster. Don't be fooled by their monstrous looks. The demon race recoils from killing. They don't relish bloodshed. She still has to claw out a way to make a living. A sudden memory slams into her. She might have a contact in another country. Her thoughts snap to her older brother Duolong. He's out there too, forging his own journey. She clung to one thing, a letter her brother wrote 4 years ago. He forged himself through brutal training in the human land of the Cathedral Kingdom, due north. If I can find Duolong, she thought, I should be okay. Penniless and out of options, she scrambled into the branches and slept in the trees for now. Lone birds sliced through the sky, echoing the fierce sweep of her own flight. The pampered princess squirmed on the gnarled, creaking branches. No comfort, no rest. A spider lowered itself on a silken thread and she erupted into terrified screams. Her empty stomach erupted into a deep, rumbling growl. The river thundered, its churning waters teeming with a waiting feast. She hauled a colossal fish aboard and froze. Hadn't the faintest clue how to turn it into a meal. She hurled a pitiful puff of dragon breath that sputtered and fizzled, barely scorching the surface. Disaster struck. The fish remained utterly raw. She couldn't live like this another heartbeat. She ripped herself free and vowed to find her brother. 2 weeks later, she barreled through the gates of the city of Elveo, breath ragged and eyes blazing. She hunted down the tavern her brother had named in his letter. The landlady lunged forward, voice cutting through the room. "Are you a demon, like the man I saw?" She'd been told Duolong had bolted for another country a year ago. Desperation ripped through Shorn as he blurted, "Where did he go?" And the woman just shook her head. She didn't know. Her years-long plan to hitch her future to her brother crumbled into ruin. The landlady leaned in, eyes hard as flint, and asked if the young demon had anywhere to stay. Sharon's heart dropped. She was completely broke. She staggered through the empty streets, hunger clawing at her insides. From morning, she hunted one thing, absolute neatness. A century of torment. How could she possibly survive it? Tears spring to her eyes as she aches for her grand palace in her own room. Longing clawed at her for her spotless bed and the soft, beautiful silk clothes that used to drape her. She yearned for a lavish feast, a world away from the burnt, raw fish she was fed. In the palace, she reclined amid gilded excess, every desire fed to her without so much as lifting a finger. Through choking sobs, a hard, clear truth began to unfurl in her chest. She bathed in opulence, every silk and feast bought with taxes exacted from her people. They fawned over her and hovered at her heels, their care owed only to her royal blood. At last it slammed into her. This life wasn't a given. Every second demanded to be cherished. Strip away her title, and every one of those things would vanish from her grasp. For one breath, the noise fell away, and clarity slammed into the disgraced princess. Tears carved tracks down her cheeks as she realized this journey existed to forge gratitude and duty into her bones. The revelation hit. Then another savage hunger pang crashed over her, snatching the moment. She balled her hand into a fist and vowed to hunt down a live-in job anywhere. She hustled day and night, treating every humble meal like a hard-won victory. She tore into the night with a fierce, "I'll do my best," that thundered across the city's rooftops. Dawn broke and she planted herself in the street, breath ragged and body spent, but her eyes burned with unshakable resolve. Her gaze snapped to a strange building wedged into the castle wall. She gaped at the unfamiliar structure, breath hitching as a single question burned up her throat. "What is this?" She gaped at the transparent walls, perfect glass she'd never seen before. She pressed her face to the clear window and spotted several people seated inside. She stood riveted to the scene, wonder blazing across her face. She froze, eyes glued to the strange triangular food, wondering if it was even edible. She whispered, "What could that be?" Curiosity snapped awake. She couldn't tear her eyes away as the staff, Yukito, Lutia, and Chap tore into their meal together. She hovered outside, a lone silhouette with eyes glued to the laughter and warm light spilling from inside. The three of them erupted in laughter, grinning as they tore into their meal. Delight surged through her. How nice, she thought. It looked utterly delicious. The sight hit her like a warm punch. She saw her family squeeze together, trading fries and laughter over Happy Meals. In the darkness, a single fierce thought roared to life. Me too. Her gaze cut razor sharp as a sudden, gut-deep longing slammed into her. A soft click echoed as she invoked her unlock gift, and the lock surrendered. "I'm going in," she barked, her mind locked like steel. The automatic doors slid open, exhaling a soft, welcoming hiss. She launched herself across the threshold with a single, resolute step. She edged up to the staff, voice barely a whisper as she asked if she could speak with them. She forced her eyes up to them and squeezed out a fragile, barely there whisper of hope. She locked onto the triangular food they were eating and blurted that it looked ridiculously tasty. She dropped that request like a bomb, and the three employees froze on the spot, mouths gaping. She jabbed a finger at the onigiri, raving again and again about how mouth-wateringly delicious it looked. Chapin and Lutia locked eyes, confusion crackling between them as neither knew what to do. You could have locked onto what she was pointing at and snatched one up. He snapped, "You mean the onigiri?" She stared. She'd never heard that name. He revealed its name, then gently pressed one into her hand. Her jaw dropped at his generosity, and she blurted, "Are you serious? Is this really okay?" You could have just lingered there, a gentle smile curling on his lips. Tears carved tracks down her cheeks as she choked out that she had no money to pay him back. Reality slammed into her. This was a restaurant. She couldn't just eat for free. He flashed a warm grin, waved off her money worries, and said, "Don't worry about the money for this." He lifted the plate and beckoned with a gentle sweep, coaxing her to take a bite. Her stomach erupted into a raw, desperate roar. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded with raw gratitude and finally accepted his offer. She cradled the onigiri in both hands, treating it like a priceless jewel. She sank a massive, hungry bite, her eyes snapping shut in pure ecstasy. A supernova of flavor detonated behind her eyes. She erupted into a cry of pure, overwhelming bliss. She reveled as the intricate duet of sweet grain and savory seasoning exploded across her palate. The crunch snapped like lightning, and the oil's rich, velvety flavor hit me like a revelation. Beneath it all, the sea's unmistakable, mouth-watering scent crashed through the air. Delicious, she thought, thrusting her hand up toward the heavens. She drifted, weightless and cradled atop a lotus of perfect flavor. Tears of pure joy carved trails down her cheeks as she whispered the word, barely more than a breath. Shebs grinned, hunger gnawing at her, and slid her own across to her. Lutia snapped she'd sprint for water and stop the princess from choking. Offer to whip up croquette soba for her and tell her to take seconds, let her eat her fill. She balanced the second on a yiri, disbelief blazing in her eyes. Her mind reeled. She had no clue what croquet soba could be. Warmth wrapped the room like a promise, and she knew in an instant this had to be delicious. Hunger and emotion slammed into her. She gulped too fast and rice jammed her throat, making her choke. Her new friends erupted into a comical frenzy, howling for water. Lutia shot to her side, steadied the cup at her lips, and snapped at her to slow down. You could all sprint over and make sure she's okay. A tiny, grateful smile broke across her face as she gripped the glass of water. Surrounded by them, a warmth she'd long forgotten surged through her, thawing the parts she'd shut away. Sunlight slammed into the Noti to Jisoba sign outside, turning it into a blinding, glittering beacon. You could have had him clap the instant he polished off his plate. Plate scraped clean, she flushed and barely breathed the question, "What does Gochi Susama mean?" Hands pressed together. Yukito leans forward and reveals the beating heart of the mealtime prayer. Sharon echoes the phrase, her voice soaring as warm smiles from her new friends close around her like sunlight. She drops her gaze and blurts an apology to Yukito for barging into his shop uninvited. She steps forward, voice like steel, and proclaims, "I am Sharon, the 8th princess of Senkoku. The staff froze, wondering why their royalty stood wrapped in rags and gaunt with hunger. She lays it out. A royal tradition, an unforgiving, grueling trial she must endure. They fall silent, jaws dropping as the idea of a 100-year training journey abroad slams into them. All three froze as the revelation slammed into them, leaving a stunned silence that hung heavy between them. You finally confirm her age. She smiles and reveals dragonoids live a full 1,000 years. He staggered back as the reality of her age in human terms slammed into him. He spots a tiny child, abandoned to the world and utterly alone. Rage sears him. Her family should have at least chipped in for travel. Chap sizes up her situation, hunting for a practical way out. He fires the question at her. Could she survive by becoming a dungeon explorer? The mere suggestions plunge them into a state of absolute terror. She swears she hates fighting monsters, and even watching someone else battle makes her blood run cold. Lutia's memory hits like lightning. Demons were created to walk beside the gods as their companions. Chap realizes, heart crashing, he's never once laid eyes on a demon inside a dungeon. He leans in, voice sharp. Could you work as a mercenary? The idea turns uglier and she spits, I hate killing people. Yukito nodded, calm certainty settling in his eyes as he fully grasped the gentle, unshakable pacifism that guided her. He admits, jaw tight, that hating to fight is a perfectly natural feeling. He flicks Chap's questions aside, shrugging and calling it nothing but his own rambling. He leaned in, voice soft as silk, and asked Shore what she'd decided to do right now. She fesses up. She has no clue. She's never worked a day in her life. Tears sting her eyes as she steels herself, staring down the grueling 100-year journey. All her brute strength crumbles if she can't even handle the basics of staying alive. Lutia turns to Yukito, desperation blazing in her eyes as she begs him to come to the lost princess's aid. You could stride up, address the girl with gentle warmth, and in Sean's voice call her Shower. He fired off an idea. She should work at their shop. Sharon froze, eyes wide, when a job offer dropped into his lap out of nowhere. Chap and Lutio exploded with joy, roaring praise for their manager's brilliant idea. Yukito grins and proclaims it's the perfect match, one move that erases both their problems. He knows he can't storm the Grand Duke's halls and demand answers about a foreign princess. He slides a crisp contract across the table and offers her the position as his live-in employee. He guarantees a solid paycheck. And the clincher, 3 hot meals a day. The offer pulsed in the air, a lone beacon of hope she clung to like a lifeline. Her voice cracked and trembled as she pleaded, Am I truly allowed to stay? The staff beams down at her, beckoning her into their ranks. She pleads, Will you feed me on the giri again? He roars back a solemn promise. He will. He vows to her, If that's what you want, I'll make it so. Preparing the exact meal she craves slams into him like a tidal wave of kindness. He roared, This is the true spirit of Nidai Tsugasoba! Gratitude exploded in her chest as she accepted the job, tears of joy streaking down her cheeks. She hurls herself to her knees, forehead pressed to the floor, begging them to let her work there. Yukito's smile lights the room as he reaches out and proclaims her the newest member of the Nadi Tsujisoba team. He strides forward and proclaims, I am Yukito Hatsushiro, the shop's manager. Lutia Selen bursts into a grin and greets her new co-worker with bright, infectious cheer. Chap bursts out that he's new too. They'll learn together. Shorin's cheeks flame and her voice trips, but a fierce, sudden warmth tells her she's finally found a family. Their kindness ignites a fire in her, and she vows to push herself to the limit for them. 5 days later, Shorin has thrown herself into her new life at the shop, carving out a steady rhythm. She was cleaning when a dish slipped from her hands and shattered across the floor, and she erupted into a non-stop cascade of apologies. She fumbles and freezes, convinced she's useless, frustration boiling over as tears flood her eyes. Chap's voice melts into warmth as he tells her, We all break dishes sometimes. Yukito declares it's undeniable proof she's been working her heart out. He pours out thanks for washing the dishes, and pride flares across her cheeks. She swears the work is brutal, yet a genuine smile never leaves her. She's truly happy here. Yukito grins and declares his gift seals the shop. No wicked soul can ever cross its threshold. She knows work can be a grind, yet a sudden, irresistible scent hits her. She inhales sharply as a mouth-watering aroma explodes from the kitchen. The manager's staff meals now blaze like beacons in her long, grinding days. She cherishes the devils perched on that giri. Their presence ignited the new life she now lives. One bite of Yukito's cooking and she fell hopelessly in love with rice. She demanded a special dish be served for today's staff meal. Yukito roared, "Her yaki onigiri is ready for her break." She snapped into comical attention, every inch locked rigid and buzzing with raw, unfiltered excitement. She practically bursts with excitement, declaring she's been counting down to this all day. He snaps, "Careful, it's piping hot, straight off the grill." A plate slides in with two perfectly grilled rice balls, their glistening skins catching the light. She clasps her hands tight, pulse racing, ready to devour her special meal. She sinks a massive, ecstatic bite into the crispy, savory snack while serving on the jury. She clamps down on the toasted crust, tearing through it as a fierce, satisfying crunch reverberates. Her eyes shot wide, surprise and delight crashing through her at the incredible new texture. She watches the grill harden the rice, flipping its soft, familiar bite into something rigid and strange. Pure bliss floods her face as she chooses, a radiant grin igniting across her features. Sweet rice ignites as the toasted soy sauce aroma sweeps over it, smoky and irresistible. She savors the unbelievably delicious flavor, letting each perfect, comforting bite wash over her. She smirks, convinced onigiri will always be just onigiri, even when it's anointed with soy sauce and seared on the grill to utter perfection. Shock lights her eyes. This daring makeover can't erase what it really is. One flawless grilled onigiri perches utterly alone on its plate. She hungrily licked her sticky fingers and grinned, raving that it was delicious. Only one precious morsel a year survives on her plate. She lunges for it as Lutia barrels in, a tray of dishes teetering in her arms. She flashes a dazzling grin and calls to Sharon, "Hang on just a moment." She storms in, clutching a ladle, a brilliant idea blazing in her mind. She jabbed a finger at the last grilled onigiri on the plate. She leans in with a grin and proclaims the perfect finale to the meal. Dashi Chazuke. The name hits the young princess like a thunderclap, entirely unknown and utterly baffling. Now you know, dashi is the savory soup base that makes their soba sing. Lucia barked at her to set the last onigiri into the empty bowl. Sharon plants the rice ball dead center in the bowl, every motion razor precise, so not a single grain stirs. Lutia declares she's about to douse it in scalding broth. She cradles the ladle, letting steaming, fragrant dashi cascade over the onigiri. She crowns it with a shower of green onions, the final perfect flourish. Sharon's face froze into a mask of pure wonder, anticipation crackling in her eyes. The finished dashi chizuke strips away the excess, radiates quiet elegance, and beckons you in with irresistible warmth. Sharon leans in, eyes alight as the golden broth gleams and bright green onion specks dance across its surface. Lutia's hands morph it into a pair of chopsticks, lifting the final comforting bite. With a warm smile, Lutia coaxes Sharon into savoring every last bite of her meal. She flashes a confident grin, vows it will be mouth-wateringly delicious, and wins a grateful "thank you" from the princess. Memories of Lutia's kindness hit Sharon like a wave. Suddenly, Lutia is the older sister she never had. Kindness pours from everyone at the shop, and she falls headfirst in love with this new family. A comforting warmth surges through her chest, a feeling she's never known before. A flash of the palace's bitter chill hits her, then warmth blooms in her chest as she knows, finally, she's truly happy working here. Determination flares inside her. She snaps her focus back to the special meal. Steam surged from the dashi chazuke, ready to sweep the chill from her bones and wrap her soul in warmth. She hoisted the bowl to her lips and drew in the fragrant, warm steam, letting it wash over her. Savory broth kisses her lips, warmth unfurling into a tender, soothing calm. The taste slams into her with uncanny nostalgia, sweeping her straight back to a sun-warmed, tranquil coastline. Lucia leans in with a soft smile and coaxes her to pull the onigiri apart as she eats. She plunges her chopsticks into the rice bowl, crushing the grains until they crumble and sink into the savory broth. Her eyes gleamed as she scooped a steaming, mouth-watering spoonful and lifted it to her lips. Her eyes snap wide in shock as an incredible new flavor detonates across her tongue. The flavor slams into her like lightning, snatching words from her mouth and drowning her in pure, ecstatic delight. A wave of bliss crashes through her as she cries, "This is absolutely delicious!" In a blink, not a single drop of that mouth-watering feast survived. She clutches the empty bowl to her chest, sobs racking her as a tidal wave of gratitude and emotion crashes over her. Tears of joy carved rivers down her cheeks as a smile of pure contentment lit her face. A deep, triumphant sigh escapes her as she sets the perfectly empty bowl down. A blissful grin blossoms across her face as warm, complete fullness floods through her. She erupts into praise, proclaiming this meal far more delicious than anything the royal palace serves. Her jaw drops. Yukito conjures gourmet dishes from plain, everyday ingredients. She yearns to stay here for the entire 100-year training. She remembers humans burn bright and brief, and their farewells will come all too soon. The thought of losing her new family slams into her, unleashing a fresh tidal wave of tears. Because of that, she vows to hurl herself into helping them, pouring every ounce of strength into the effort. Far to the northwest, the remote, sacred Ishitaka Mountains tore into the sky like jagged stone spears. Silver-haired pilgrims stare up at the holy mountain, gratitude welling in their chests. They've finally arrived. Tears of pure joy pour from her eyes. She made it to the holy site on her own 2 feet. A local man steps forward and warns them the mountain range is strictly off-limits. He explains, voice fierce, a guardian deity still stands watch atop the sacred mountain. A sacred guardian, an elf, dwells upon the land, toiling and tending it. Taylor Vishtaka stares at the jagged peaks, remembering how the mountain meant everything to his elven kin: refuge, fortress, and sacred heart. The mountain hides a marsh that seethes with raw, untamed magic. Elves carved a tiny settlement here, scraping by as they plunge into the nearby dungeons to loot whatever they can. Another crucial chapter of their life on the mountain unfolds. He yanks up the village's prized potatoes, the local specialty that defiantly thrives in the barren soil. He shouldered his harvest and strode back through Elven Tree's simple, rustic settlement. His gaze rips skyward as something hurtles down from above. A massive bird plummets from the sky and lands, impossibly graceful, on his outstretched, bandaged arm. A magical sigil bursts to life on its brow, the mark of the tame gift. This enchanted gift crowns its bearer with the power to command animals and wield them as fierce, loyal allies. This bird is a messenger, streaking across the sky with an important letter clutched in its beak. Teo eased the knots from the scroll with careful, sure hands, breath catching as he wondered who could have sent this message. He unfolds the letter, reads the first lines, and his face snaps tight as worry flares in his eyes. His aunt's letter crashed into his hands, trembling words begging to know if he, and everyone, were okay. She slams ink onto the page, pouring out an urgent plea about a girl named Tessaria, his cousin raised in the wild heart of Ibaraki Forest, stands before him as the woman promised to him, his betrothed. His jaw drops as he reads she hasn't sent a single letter home in 10 years. His worried aunt begged him to go check on her. He eyed the endless road, the journey looming, but duty compelled him forward. He can feel it. His unique gift for flight magic will end this in a heartbeat. This rare gift lets him tear across the land as if roads and terrain simply don't exist. Before he embarks on his journey, he seeks out his father to speak. His father, fevered and too weak to go, swore he'd keep watch over the fields. Teo erupts, protesting that his father's been bedridden with crippling back pain. 20 years ago, his mother died, and their world collapsed into just him and his father. His father cuts in, like he'd seen it coming, and tells Teo, "Don't worry." He brandishes an ornate bottle, the secret treasure he'd kept hidden away. Teo gapes, confusion written all over his face, and blurts to his father, "What is that strange bottle?" His father locked eyes with him, jaw set, and thundered the name of the panacea. Teo screamed, disbelief ripping through him as he laid eyes on the panacea. They whisper of a legendary elixir no one can craft, a single drop that erases every illness. His father leans in, voice tight, and says Teo's grandfather unearthed it while delving into a dungeon. Whispers about it haunted Teo, but he couldn't believe his father actually possessed it. He'd stashed it away for his wife, Amma. It was useless in the end. A panacea rips sickness from the body, but it can't pull the dead back to life. He roars he'll use it now so Teo won't have to worry. Tears stream down Teo's cheeks as his father's selfless act of love shatters his composure. His father barked, "Go! Tessaria is your betrothed!" The ancient elf snapped the cork off the precious vial, hoisted it to his lips, and braced to drink the potion. He slammed the vial to his lips and downed every drop of the legendary, life-changing panacea. He instantly spits it out, shrieking that the taste is utterly revolting. Gratitude blazing in his smile, Teo thanks his father and steels himself to leave. Several days later, Teo storms the gates of the magnificent royal capital, its golden spires looming like crowns. He tears open the letter and the confirmation lands like a blow. Tessaria works at the Third Research Institute. He steels himself, marches into the royal castle, a state facility, and asks for directions. At the main gate, the royal guards shoved them aside and barred their way. He throws his plea at them, voice raw. The guards stand immovable, refusing to let an elf pass. Hooves thundered as a horse-drawn carriage charged in, yanking their conversation to a halt. Desperation ripped from Teo as he bellowed, "Assyria, are you here?" A nobleman vaulted from the carriage, his gaze snapping to Tessaria's name. Marquis Canis storms forward and snaps, "Is Teo related to Tessaria?" Heat flooded Teo's face. She stammered at the man, "Who are you, and how do you know me?" The Marquis proclaims he's nobility. Tessaria once pulled him back from the jaws of death. Teo proclaims he's arrived at Sasaki Research Institute. Marcus's face snaps tight. Nerves flare and a bead of sweat forms on his brow. He admits, bitter and sharp, that it's a shame Theo came all this way. Tessaria's not here. She's in Alvail, hunting answers on an investigative mission. Convinced they'd given him the runaround, Teo snaps and rockets into the sky, frustration fueling every furious wingbeat. A few days later, his journey at last brought him crashing into the old capital's weathered gates. He gaped, awestruck at the human city's luminous, breathtaking streets. He just knew elves were so rare she'd be impossible to miss. Heart pounding, he sidles up to a scarred, hard-eyed adventurer and begs for any scrap of information. He leaned in, voice like steel, and demanded the man tell him if he knows of any female elves in the city. He recognizes her, the towering, ravenous elf woman who's always at Sugiba, endlessly devouring food. Teo reels, mouth agape. Elves are famed for dainty appetites. Doubt claws at him. Could this really be Tessaria? Yet the man looks utterly certain. Elf Teo leans in, curiosity crackling, and asks about a place called Suja Soba, betting it's a diner. A local adventurer sizes Teo up and asks if he's new. Shyly, the elf meets the question with a steady nod, confirming he is. A knowing smirk flashes across the man's face as he taunts, "No wonder he hasn't heard." He bursts out, eyes shining, declaring Suja Soba the city's most packed, buzzing diner. He snaps at Teo, "Search the old castle wall. It's built right into the stones." Elves are rare. He bets the regulars there must have crossed paths with Teo's friend. Teo reels as a shockingly precise, insanely useful detail blindsides him. Teo snaps into a polite, grateful bow and watches the friendly adventurer lift a hand to wave goodbye. Armed with a fresh lead and steel in his gaze, Theo storms into the diner to investigate. He charges up to the shop and finds a massive, buzzing line of people, all ages and backgrounds, spilling out the door. A faint blush blooms on his cheeks as he declares, "This is the famous Sujisoba." He spots the shop, a neon scream in the street, exactly as the man had gushed. Even to his country-honed eyes, this shop screamed out of place in the city's bustle. His eyes snap to razor focus as he locks onto a familiar figure beyond the window. He freezes when he spots an elf at the counter, heart hammering. Could this finally be the one he's been hunting? Steel in his bones, he flings the door open and charges into the shop to prove his suspicions true. Resigned to the wait, he trudges to the tail of the long, winding queue. 30 minutes later, his patience finally pays off. He bursts onto the front line. The door whooshes open and a voice from inside barks, "Next customer!" He plunges through the doorway as glide seals shut behind him in one silent, effortless sweep. The automatic door's advanced technology blasts the mountain elf into wide-eyed silence. Heat flooded his face as he forced himself to calm down, insisting it was only a city-issued magical tool. Sharon, the demon princess, now in an apron, sweeps up to him with a practiced smile and serves a warm, professional welcome. He ruffles the proud young waitress's hair with a quick, encouraging pat, beaming at her confident greeting. Sharon bellows that the shop's bursting at the seams, so he'll have to share. She jabbed a finger at the lone open stool right beside the other elf at the counter. Teo barreled to the counter, eyes locked on the familiar figure. He shoots a warm, grateful smile at the young waitress, and she melts into a shy blush. He watches Tessaria accept her meal, and light floods her face until it ignites into a radiant, beaming smile. He gaped, stunned as she slurped her noodles with unapologetic, ferocious gusto. She tosses elven decorum aside like trash, and he freezes, jaw dropped, speechless and utterly baffled. Tessaria snaps to attention, locks onto his relentless stare, and asks, "Can I help you find a seat?" She beckoned to the empty stool beside her, her smile a warm, polite invitation for him to sit. Their eyes finally meet, and a dazzling bolt of joyful recognition explodes between them. Delight exploded across their faces as they burst into joyful calls, shouting each other's names.